So we're going to go live in about 6 or 7 minutes, and I see we've already got probably about 800 people on Zoom alone who've tuned in already. We know a lot of people arrived just after 8 o'clock as well, but we'd love to know where in the world you're joining us from. Welcome, and if you can use the chat button, please say hello to us, tell us where in the world you are, and also tell us why you're interested in second passports, and if you are interested, where you would like a second passport from, or where you think you'd be most eligible for a second passport for. So Dina, you've done a bit of research into this area, have you not?
I have indeed, based on my own ancestral history and family. So I've looked at Poland, I've looked at Lithuania, because both were options. So I've got some of our people on our panel this evening. But yeah, I think it also makes you start wondering where you really come from in the world, and it actually starts getting you to start looking at your family tree. I mean, I know that there are the schools that actually have a roots project where you have to go and you have to really start finding out where your parents come from, where your grandparents come from, your great-grandparents. And all I can say is that it is absolutely critical that you do it now, because whilst you have access to those people and while they're still with us, you need to ask them where they come from. You need to know as much information as possible about your family, your history, because otherwise what you're going to end up doing is spending a lot of time trying to find it out.
So Dina, in fact, where are your grandparents from?
So my grandparents on my father's side come from Lithuania. My grandmother comes from Lithuania, actually, from a town called Krakanova. I know there are lots of people who come from Krakanova. In fact, I've even visited Lithuania. I've been to Nida's house. I was lucky enough to have dinner in her home. And going to Lithuania was really, for me, I'd always heard about it. I'd heard about the Krakanova Society, but it wasn't something that really resonated with me until I actually started. First, I went to Poland on a tour with Mizrahi, it was called Journey to Life. And then after that, I was on a mission to absolutely find my roots. So we went to Lithuania, I went to Latvia. My grandfather on my father's side as well comes from Belarus, from a town called Lechavich. So I'm still on that mission to get over there. So yeah, but it's an amazing journey through history when you actually go and you start really looking at your ancestry. It's fascinating.
And have you applied for a second passport?
I have indeed, but it is in process. So hopefully we'll be getting some of those answers this evening about how to go about it.
That's amazing. My ancestors, all 4 grandparents, came from Lithuania. On my father's side from Rakashik and Abel, on my mother's side from Kruk and Pumpian. I have been to all 4 of those shtetls. I have found the grave of my grandfather's great-grandfather, who shares the exact same Hebrew names as I do. I have walked into my great-grandfather's orchard and picked the apples off the trees in his orchard, and it was probably the most moving experience I could ever have. So for those people watching, at some point in time, we will do a heritage history virtual trip on Zoom through to Lithuania, but it is probably one of the most meaningful things you could ever do, to go back and find your roots, whether they're in Lithuania or Latvia or Poland or Estonia, wherever they are. It really is something. And while there's still people alive who actually remember where they came from, and some of whom were born in some of these little shtetls in Eastern Europe, very, very important that you be able to find out as much information as you can from them. In fact, in the archives in Kovna and Kaunas, I held the original of my grandparents' marriage certificate from 1922, and that started a journey. Nida knows, because Nida's looking after my application to try restore my Lithuanian citizenship. So the time is in fact 1 minute to 8. We're going to go live in 3 minutes time, and we're joined by an unbelievable, illustrious panel. And of course, as always, Dan Stillerman, where are you? Let's turn on your camera and see how you're doing. Hello, Dan.
Hello, Howie. Hello, Dina. Hello, panelists. How are you all doing?
Fantastic. How is the master of the buff tonight?
Sure, buff representing here. Well, I'm 12 hours into my Zoom day, so heading into the hour number 13 and 14. So just another day in lockdown.
You're just getting started, really.
Yeah.
I had one of those Zoom days yesterday. Dina and I finished about, I think, 11:30 last night.
Yep.
and I had started on 10. I had a 20-minute break during the day that I wasn't on Zoom. I feel like, Dan, they should give us Zoom medals.
Yeah, you should at least mix it up with Skype and Google and some different apps. I mean, you can't just do Zoom.
I must say, I did do a Teams meeting yesterday as well.
Okay, very good.
Hate
very
it,
good.
absolutely
Yeah.
hate it.
Yeah, it's got nothing on Zoom.
Fantastic. So, Dan, we actually have a very busy evening this evening, don't we? We
Very
have so
busy
many
indeed.
panelists around the world. We've got little snippets and adverts from all of them. We're going to keep you sweating and working hard, are we not?
Well, that's why I've got the buff to help with all that sweat. I'm pulling the strings.
And Dan, you said, let's try finish by 10 o'clock. I said, I'm not sure that's going to be possible, but we are going to have a lot of question and answers. And at any point in time, if something doesn't apply to you or if you've had enough, please feel free to go to bed. But we're going to try get through as many questions and answers as possible and try give as much valuable information as we can to people this evening. So if you're feeling exhausted, if you don't have any more questions, please feel free. We're just like the television, turn us off or flip to another channel. I don't think there are any other channels on Zoom, but if you do have some questions, we're going to try literally get to as many people as possible, because this is just such a huge topic. Dan, I haven't checked how many people have logged in on Zoom. We have 700 logins on Zoom. That's about 1,400 people on Zoom. Many more people will be on YouTube as well. And we're going to start this in 1 minute time. We asked everyone to please tell us where in the world you are and why you're interested in a second passport, and if so, what passport you think you're going to be most interested or eligible for. And Dina, I didn't tell you, but I asked Dan to put up a few panels so we can ask some of those questions towards the start of tonight as well.
We've got one panel, but we've got a few polls.
Oh, sorry. One panel, two polls.
Yeah.
Polls and panels, when you spend enough time on Zoom, they all get confused.
Well, the time has just gone 2 minutes past 8, and on behalf of the South African Jewish Report, I want to welcome everyone this evening. Tonight, in fact, constitutes our 40th Zoom lockdown panel. Dan, remember how young you used to look when we began this with one single panel about 3 months ago?
It feels like about 3 years ago. I was clean shaven, I was young and sprightly and full of energy.
And soon you'll be applying for your pension.
Yeah, can maybe apply for my pension and my second passport.
Well, a huge thank you. You've got lots of really hard work tonight. You're going to be sweating away, pulling all the levers, doing all the controls, making sure that everything runs really smoothly. So a huge thank you to you, Dan. Really appreciate everything that you do.
Pleasure. Thanks, Howie.
And Dina, welcome. So nice to host another panel with you.
Absolutely. We should do this more often. Oh, wait, we do.
Well, we've got an amazing night ahead, and we could not have put this panel together without another two people, Danny Kadar and Britt Landsman. They have been dealing with many of the people on this panel for years who've been advertisers in the Jewish Report newspaper. And we said to them, we have this idea of a second passport panel, put it together. And so they delivered it to us on a plate.
They did indeed, which we thank them tremendously for.
So a huge thank you to both Danny and to Britt for all your hard work in putting tonight together. Very importantly, we tell everyone at the start of each of these panels that you have a few buttons at the bottom of your screen. The one is a chat button, and that's the button that tells us where you are, allows you to chat amongst yourselves, allows you to comment as you go through. And we'll also be posting quite a bit of information tonight in the chat panels, contact details for everyone that you're going to be seeing tonight. That's all going to go into the chat section. But if you have any questions, there's a Q&A button, and we're going to try pose as many of those questions as possible to members of the panel. Very important to remember, we can't get through everyone's detailed history. We're going to try to do this in broad brush strokes tonight. We're going to try to say these are the requirements, but we can't answer every single detailed question, and that's why we're going to post all of the people's contact details onto the chat section this evening, and that will give you the opportunity to contact everyone and get some more information and maybe ask some of your very personal questions. questions this evening. I see we've got over 1,600 people already on Zoom, already watching us. And so before we begin, we want to thank Mantis, because Mantis Security, this is probably, Dina, I imagine about the 10th panel that Mantis have in fact sponsored. And they look after so many of the institutions within our own community. They look after businesses. They're really one of the great leading security companies of South Africa. So before we begin, a huge thank you to Mantis, and let us see your advert. Please, Dan, if you could show us an ad from Mantis. Well, a huge thank you to Mantis. We really, really appreciate all of the support. And if you are looking for a security solution for your home or for your business or your townhouse complex, please give Mantis a shout. I think they'd love to hear from you. And they really are a great leading security company within Johannesburg. So now, Dina, you and I are afflicted with the same problem. We are both habitual travelers. How many countries have you been to?
Sure. You know that I actually haven't counted, but a lot. I've been to probably most continents, not on Antarctica yet, although I would actually love to go. But I have been to a lot of countries, from South America to Australia to North America, lived there, from Europe to Asia. Yeah, all over. India, Croatia. I mean, I actually am going to have to make a list now, because now you've put me under pressure.
So the correct app to use on your phone is in fact an app called Bean, B-E-E-N, and you can tick all the countries that you visited and it colors in the map for you. I can tell you I've been to 76 countries, and I have passports and passports full of visas. And every time I need to go somewhere, it takes me a week to collect documents and 3 months bank statements and getting photos taken and getting letters from my medical insurance and getting letters from my employers and signing declarations and filling out forms. An American visa form takes you about 3-4 hours to in fact complete. And being a habitual traveler and gone to 76 countries, it is the most inconvenient thing in the world to have a South African passport that you travel on. My passports get full long before they ever expire. Dina, I don't know if you experience those same problems.
I have, and you also sometimes have to have 2 passports, so that when you've got different visas that you're applying for in different countries, that you can send one to one consulate, another one to another consulate, so you get them back in time so you can actually leave for your trip. So yes, massive issue in terms of actually getting a visa. So not the most convenient to have a South African passport all of the time.
So I must tell you that I have no intention of leaving South Africa. I have no intention of giving up my South African passport. But if I could make my ability to travel so much easier and do away with this burdensome visa thing, you know, a visa to the UK, a 10-year visa, I think today costs 18,000 Rand just for a 10-year visa to the UK. You can't even get a long-term visa to the European Union. So there have been some occasions where I've applied for 2 or 3 visas to Europe in a single year.
Yeah, they'll literally give you the time from when you land until you leave, and that is it.
So there are many reasons why people would want visas, but it's very important legally to state one thing right at the beginning. South African law allows you to have multiple citizenships and passports from various countries. But the one requirement is that you have to, in fact, apply for permission for that second passport or that second citizenship. And you must, in fact, do so before you receive your second passport. So if you're applying, they can't say no to you because it's a legal right. But if you do not apply at the Department of Home Affairs to have that second passport, they can in fact strip you of your South African passport if you haven't applied. So very, very important legal thing that we're dealing with tonight. A lot of people are looking for second passports. But please, please just follow the correct procedure at the Department of Home Affairs. Submit your application to tell them you're applying for a second passport, and make sure you do it before that second passport is in fact issued to you. So Dina, tonight we're actually going to be talking about two types of second passports. What are the difference between them?
Yes, so as we've said, there are two types of passports we can get. One is specifically related to ancestral visas, so where your family comes from, your grandparents, so that you actually have a claim against to get a passport from another country. Or the second option is actually an investment visa, where you can actually purchase the right to have another passport. So we're going to be looking at both of those this evening. We've got experts across both fields, and we're going to have a lot of information that comes through this evening. So hopefully it'll be very helpful to those who are watching tonight.
So what we're going to do this evening, we're actually going to do kind of almost a high-level run-through of everything that's available, explain to people what their options are, and then at the end, we're going to open it for questions. But we're going to try to get through the brunt, the crux. What do you actually need in order to apply for a second passport? What are the requirements? What are the documentation? We'll go almost country by country. And then at the end, we're going to delve in more details in people's Q&As. So let us, in fact, start with probably the most relevant one to our audience, and that is, in fact, Lithuania. And we'd like to welcome both Nida and Avi. Both of you deal with Lithuania. So let's unmute. Nida, welcome. Avi, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
So,
hello.
So Nida, you in fact have a long-term relationship with South Africa. Tell us very briefly about your connection to South Africa.
Well, that's nicely said that I have long-term connection with South Africa. I consider it my second home. And when you discussed about these passport opportunities, the one thing which I would love to have is, as you call it, Green Mamba passport, because I experienced these all troubles when I have with my Lithuanian passport to apply for South African visa. So I know your pain. I feel your pain. So therefore, yes. But speaking about Lithuanian passports and about South Africa, my connection to South Africa, I've been I would say constant visitor, constant traveler to South Africa for the last perhaps 12 or 13 years. I visit South Africa a couple times a year, sadly not at this situation. And I do passports for only Lithuanian passports for more than 5 years already. So we have, I never calculated how many persons we have in our database, but I'm sure it's more than 1,000 we have already assisted or in the process of assisting.
And in fact, your husband was Lithuanian ambassador to South Africa, resident in Tel Aviv. Is that correct?
Yeah, I intentionally didn't mention it because, you know, my husband does his job and I do my job. So we are not related in that issue whatsoever. He's responsible currently for, while he was the ambassador, I was not doing the passports. I started doing the passports when he is not ambassador anymore.
Right.
So that there is no conflict of interest, obviously.
And Avi, you've been traveling to and from South Africa regularly for many, many years.
Not for many, many years, for about 3 years now.
Okay.
The first time I arrived was in 2017. Then I contacted people contacted me. I met some friends. It always starts like that, in synagogue and in other gatherings, dinner. And I found out, actually, the idea of arriving to South Africa was through the Jewish community here, the South African Jewish community in Israel. I have some friends here. And when they heard what do I do for my living, they told me, Abby, listen, most of the Jews in South Africa actually have Lithuanian and Polish ancestry, heritage. So why don't you come and do it there? So this is when I first arrived. Made some gathering, met some people, and this is how I started working.
Well, amazing. We're going to ask you both a lot of questions about applying for a second passport, Lithuanian passport. And Nida, we're going to start with you just to understand the basics. So Nida, what are the general requirements in order for South Africans to apply for the reinstatement of their Lithuanian passports?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for being the first in this panel, and I would like to perhaps to a little bit to focus for literally 2 minutes on the definitions, because I heard several times here on this panel, and I've been hearing it from our clients, the wrong expression and perhaps wrong understanding. You call this ancestral visa. So I would like to explain that this is not any visa. This is citizenship. This is the same citizenship which I, being born in Lithuania, I don't know how many generations Lithuanian descent do have. You are getting the same passport, because here you are not naturalizing, you are not acquiring citizenship by any other means or ways. You are getting your citizenship back based on the fact that your ancestors were citizens of Lithuania. So you have the same rights, the same obligations, the same passport. There is no absolutely difference between my passport, Lithuanian passport, and your passport as a second passport. The only difference which you have is that you fall into very narrow exception of the laws, which allow you to have dual citizenship. And by dual citizenship, Lithuanian laws mean multiple citizenship, which means that you keep all your passports. You can have as many as you want, as you basically have or are eligible to, and you still are receiving Lithuanian passport on top of it. You are not renouncing any of your citizenship. There is no limit of the number of the passports. For us Lithuanians, we have no such rights, because according to constitution, we can hold only one and only citizenship. So you guys are in much better even position with in South Africa. Now, speaking about the requirements, as you said, who is eligible, it is also, there are several legal requirements for the people who might apply for reinstatement of Lithuanian citizenship. So the first and main requirement is to prove that your ancestor within 3 generations, which means that either your parent, your grandparent, or your great-grandparent held Lithuanian citizenship between 1918 and 1940. And then he or she emigrated to another country and lived in that country entire life. So also it's a little bit confusing sometimes for people why this 1918 is so important in this entire issue. So I would like again, to explain to you that Lithuania as a state formally was established at 1918 only. And we are speaking about citizenship held by your ancestors. So if your ancestor departed from Lithuania earlier than 1918, he could not be citizen of Lithuania because that country did not exist at that time. That territory of Lithuania belonged to Russia. So your ancestors most probably must have traveled on Russian passports. And as I say, Lithuania did not exist at that time. So this is in many instances is quite confusing to people, because they consider Lithuania as forever Lithuania. Yes, we do consider as well, but we have here to stick to the legal definitions. And citizenship held by your ancestor is the main and the only requirement for you to apply for your reinstatement of your citizenship. Of course, there are other requirements, but these requirements are less, I would say, important and could be dealt with. This is the most important.
So if you had any ancestor who left Lithuania after 1918, yes, and before 1941, is that correct? That's the other cutoff date?
1940, 15th of June. There have been another requirement, legal requirement, recently added a couple of years ago. It came in a form of not amendment of the laws, but as a precedent in the court, which says that this former ancestor, this ancestor of yours who lived in Lithuania later than 1918 and was traveling in between two wars, he would have to remain Lithuanian citizen until 1940, June 15. Now, it's a little bit, again, it's a little bit tricky issue because there was a couple of years in the history of Lithuania and South Africa, and according to my observation, it was between 1936-37 until 1940, when Lithuania and South Africa had a sort of bilateral agreement, according to which South African government would be sharing the data with the Lithuanian government, which Lithuanian citizens acquired South African passport, have been naturalized basically in South Africa. According to Lithuanian constitution, a person couldn't have dual citizenship at any time. This means that when a person accepted other citizenship, I mean, when he was naturalized in South Africa, he would automatically lose his Lithuanian citizenship. Now, the question is whether this information was somehow delivered to Lithuania by official channels. So as I said, there have been various exchanging instances of the lists of citizens who acquired South African citizenship, based on which Lithuanian government in 1938, 37, 39 would be stripping off these people officially of Lithuanian citizenship because, well, they just accepted the other citizenship, and according to constitution, they couldn't hold at the same time Lithuanian citizenship. But if a person, even though he accepted, he was naturalized in South Africa, for instance, 1925 or 28 or 30 or whatever, and this information never officially was shared with the Lithuanian government, in this is not an obstacle for a person to apply for reinstatement, because there is no official notice of this fact in Lithuanian archives. And the first source of information for Lithuanian government when it comes to reinstatement of the citizenship is Lithuanian source. I mean, they check, first of all, Lithuanian archives. They trust Lithuanian archives as a first source, not South African naturalization certificate dated, I don't know, 32, 35, or which obviously is earlier than 1940. This is why. Sorry?
No, I said no. There's a lot actually to it. Howie, I don't know if we want to finish this off and then we'll carry on.
Sure. Sorry, I just stick to
no. There's a fourth.
So Dina, let's try to get through as much as possible, and we're going to come down to many of the specifics, I think, in the Q&A section.
All right, perfect. So I think let's also get to Avi and let's ask Avi a question. So Avi, in terms of if you actually get your passport, so once you've got your Lithuanian passport, what are you entitled to? So I know there's some things regarding education, so travel, obviously. What are you actually entitled to once you get that passport?
So as most people know, Lithuania is part of the European Union, which until not long ago included 29 countries, but now since UK left, we can count it as 28 countries. Now, being a citizen of one of the EU, of a country which is member in the EU, you're actually European citizen. Unlike the United States, in which you don't have, let's say, a Floridian or Californian passport, you only have the US, the federal one. In Europe, you got an individual citizenship of a country, and since that country is part of the EU, you are considered to be a European citizen. Now, there are several agreements between the countries which are member in the EU, that entitle citizens of each individual country to enjoy benefits in all the other 28 countries. As for example, if you're Lithuanian, then you can actually go through the whole of Europe. You don't really need to show any passport, and you're entitled to work, you're entitled to live, you're even entitled to become owner of some property. Being Israeli, I can tell you that in several countries in the EU, I'm not allowed to become a private owner of property. But let's go to the things that actually are more interesting for people, and let's talk about studies. So high studies in universities. In Europe is very important for the countries. The education is very important. So if you're an EU citizen, let's say Lithuanian one, so you're entitled to study for very, very low money. In some countries, depends what profession or what role do you want to choose. So sometimes even for free. In Germany, in Spain, in Poland, in Hungary, in Slovakia, in any of the countries. So this is a very big benefit, obviously.
All right, so it doesn't matter which passport you hold, as long as it's EU, you can go to any of those countries.
As long as it's EU, you can go and study and live and work in any of the 28 countries with the very same benefits.
So Nida, let's ask the question. We have a question that's come in. What documentation do you actually need in order to prove that you are qualified to be Lithuanian? What sort of documents should people collect?
First of all, your eligibility is proven by any document which proves that your ancestor held Lithuanian citizenship. The Lithuanian citizenship can be proved by presenting, for instance, passport, the traveling passport, which the ancestor had when he was traveling from Lithuania to South Africa. But for sure, not everyone has this document. So we usually, in those cases, we just gather information, very basic information, such as name, surname, the name of the shtetl where the family was living in Lithuania, the approximate year of birth and emigration, and having these basic data, we go to the archives and we find, I don't know, if data is correct, 90 to 95% of the needed documents. So even though a person does not possess any document whatsoever, birth certificates, passports, or whatever issued in Lithuania, if they know the data, we usually go ahead and we usually find it, because Lithuanian archives are in perfect shape.
So in fact, Nida, there are websites as well where you can find reference to many of these documents. I know for many of the people watching, they would have maybe used jewishgen.org. And their birth certificates, their death certificates, their marriage certificates, many of these documents are in fact listed there. And if you know where your family come from, you can even go down to shtetl level and actually find many of the documents that you're looking for.
This is correct. Not all information is precise, because I've checked some of the sources which are noted in that, and it was not always correct, but you can get an idea. You can really get an idea, and sometimes you can get an idea about spelling, because this is usually what is the most difficult thing, because people would be anglicizing their surnames and their names. So in many cases it was quite obvious, but there are cases where we are struggling, and we have to be very creative to rethink, what the spelling of this Jewish surname would have to be used in Lithuania. But trust me, in 5 years, I have such a well-trained eye that, somehow I go through the sixth feeling, and usually it's like it's very hazarding for me. I love spending time in archives, and I do not allow to do this work anyone else but myself.
Yeah, no, listen, I've been through that, so I do understand. Sorry, Avi, what were you saying?
I'm saying I would like to complete what Nida said, actually, because in JewishGen, org. I don't remember the site by now. So you do have information, but very often it is that the information in the JewishGen is actually not inclusive. So if you go and look in the archives in Lithuania, in many cases, you might and you will find documentation and proofs of citizenship which are not actually accessible in the JewishGen. So this is something that actually Nida suggested that, but I would only like to mention that again to make it clear.
Yeah, and I found that to be there myself. But Avi, let's talk about how long does it actually take to do this whole process? So what is the actual process? Like, how long do we expect once you start the actual application to get that citizenship? How long does it take?
Okay, so we must actually separate the whole process to 2 stages. The first stage is trying to obtain those documents proving your eligibility, proving that your ancestor was a Lithuanian citizen. Now, just like Nida said, some people do have birth certificates, or they might have a passport, etc. But in many other cases, people don't have those documents. So we have to look for them. Now, to apply for those documents to each and every archive, because the situation is like that, like Nida said before, the archives are in really perfect situation, and you can really find many documents there. But in order to apply to each and every archive, and as I mentioned before, there are a few. Usually it takes a few weeks, let's say from 4 to 6 weeks, to get the answers from all archives. Now, once you got the documentation, the proofs, so we know, okay, now it's not only that you claim that you're eligible, you're also eligible. Then we go to the stage in which I ask the client from South Africa or from Israel, also lived in Israel, obviously, from documents from Home Affairs, like birth certificates, marriage certificates, certificate proving change of name, and other marriage certificate, I think I mentioned, death certificate as well. Those documents must be proved, certified by local notary and with an apostille stamp. And only then do you actually submit the application. So it is the first stage is obtaining the documents in Lithuania. Once those are actually obtained, then you can actually submit the application. And the application itself usually takes, I would say, if it is the first family member, let's say we have a father and 5 children. This is a case I had lately. So I'm usually very careful, although I know that the person is eligible, and although I know that the person will be granted with the Lithuanian citizenship, I always stay cautious and I tell them, listen, let's first apply for yourself. When I get it for you, I know 110% that I can also get it for your children. So I don't want you actually to put your money ahead for your children. I would like the authorities first to approve your application. So the first application might take, let's say, around 1 year, 11 months. Sometimes we got it, and sometimes it's 14 months. And then the other applications of family members would usually take up to 6 months.
So Nida, a lot of people are just asking for clarification on the issue of naturalization. So let's just go through that again. So let us presume that your ancestors were naturalized in South Africa, but no record was ever sent to Lithuania. You basically, what people don't know doesn't hurt you. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yes. Yes. So as I tried to explain previously, when you apply in Lithuanian institution for Lithuanian whatever service, Lithuanian citizenship reinstatement, the first source of information are Lithuanian sources. Only secondary sources are South African sources. In this case, it's amazing thing because, you know, when it comes to holding citizenship until 1940, even though your ancestors have been naturalized in South Africa prior to 1940, and logically, this ancestor would have been stripped of Lithuanian citizenship because he couldn't hold the dual citizenship at that time. But if Lithuanian state has never been informed officially about that, even though we show this naturalization certificate, it is not an obstacle to Lithuanian government to approve your citizenship because they do not trust the date in naturalization certificate the same way as they trust data in Lithuanian state archives. And if there is no official notice of this particular person losing his Lithuanian citizenship before 1940, you will be good to go. And this is why we go to the archives and we double check if there is no official notice in the archives about the fact of this person losing Lithuanian citizenship. And I would very quickly like to add a comment on Avi's information. I think this is, yes, there are 3 main archives in Lithuania, and living and our office is perhaps 20 minutes away from the archive. So for us, it usually takes 2 hours to do the full research and to get the answer whether a person is eligible or not. Because as I say, I do not trust even archive ladies because I know when I'm searching, and I'm responsible for entire database. So we usually do it ourselves, and only when I find the data, then I apply to the archives for official certificate.
Okay, so sorry, Nida, just one point of clarification. In the unlikely event that your ancestor, in fact, their naturalization, in fact, was sent to Lithuania, and there's a copy in Lithuania, is that it? No further discussion?
Yes, that's
you can't
correct.
apply. That's
you are not
then
eligible.
then you're not eligible.
You are not eligible.
In fact, there've been about 3 questions that have come in about people who have adopted children. What is the case with adoption? Do they follow the citizenship and the rights of the parents?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be bloodline. If on the documents, if this was official adoption, so either the person has adoption papers, or the child's father and mother are recorded as adoptive people. So there's no. We had several cases with adopted kids, and they were all successful.
All right. And Avi, I want to know from you, how many South Africans have actually applied for their citizenship or for their passports?
Well, I don't even have 100 clients yet in South Africa applying for Lithuanian. But this is actually another issue because I also deal with Portuguese and Polish. So I got I believe it's about 36 clients at the moment that have applied. I got, I think it is 11 people which already got the citizenship. To be frank, I don't even know if they went to the Lithuanian embassy, to issue the passport itself, but they do have already in hand the citizenship itself.
All right, John, we'll be talking about your other passports later as well.
And Nida, you mentioned you've applied for over 1,000 South Africans. Is that correct?
Yeah. Not only South Africans, we have also clients in Australia, UK, I mean, Israel, entire world. So South Africa is just my favorite country. And my expertise lays on South Africa, on South African documents, on South African problems, issues with home affairs, with everything. So I feel like I'm South African myself. I feel the pain. So, it's easy for me to advise people further.
So there have been some new developments, Nida, about the Lithuanian army. If you get Lithuanian citizenship, are you eligible to serve in the army? And if so, until what age?
Okay, that's the hot topic after this article in Jewish Report. You cannot imagine what's happening with my mailbox. Suddenly, many people found their names or their children's names in the conscriptees list. Now they are very much panicking. So once again, please do not panic. It's the easiest way to resolve this issue. It's much easier than having citizenship reinstated. So don't worry, no one will have to go and serve in the army. Yes, now speaking very, very seriously. If you are a citizen of Lithuania, and I started my this discussion by the fact that you guys are getting the same passport as I have, as anyone else has, and we have these things by birth, which means that you have the same rights and the same obligations. According to Lithuanian laws, the boys from 18 till 23 years of age can be invited to serve in the army, in Lithuanian army. This conscription is based on lottery, so you never know who will be drafted to the list. At the moment, there is enough, this is more than enough now, volunteers in Lithuania who want to go to the army, because comparing to Israel, it's a joke. It's a big boys, playground. So people who want to go to the army because there are financial benefits and it's just nice time to spend time. In any case, as a citizen, you have the obligation to acknowledge this, drafting fact, to register, to supply them with data about yourself, how they can reach you, and also to give them the reasons why you cannot serve in Lithuanian army, which is 9 months, the service is 9 months. So usually if a person is a student of the high school, this is more than enough to be released, and it happens over emails, and it's really very professional, very fast, very, very, very high standard. Just we started yesterday dealing with one of my clients, 2 sons who have been drafted. And today she emailed me already entire correspondence. Today they are released. Yesterday they were drafted and had to show up to the military base. Today they are released, thanked for registration, and invited to check the list next year. So don't panic, don't worry. It's just.
So if Howard gets his citizenship, do you think they're going to call him up? He's been training.
He's he's already a citizen, so this is only applicable to the citizens, and this is there are tiny issues, I would say. In order to check whether you are drafted or not, you have to know your Lithuanian ID code. You know, we in Lithuania, when we are born, we get our ID code by birth. So we know exactly our unique ID code. For you guys, when you get your citizenship, you learn, you first time you know your ID code when you get your passport. Now, this situation with the passports, when there is a lockdown and many people have been reinstated the citizenship, on Monday, I guess 10 families of our clients reinstated the citizenship. So it was more than 50 people who got citizenship in one day. So all these people, obviously, they do not have passports yet, and I have no idea when they are going to receive the passports. So they have no clue what the ID code of the person is. So for them, it's technically impossible to check whether they are on the list or not. So I called the military base and I advised on that problem. So they said, well, they are not aware of that thing, but there are still things going on, and we are trying. When we notice it, we try to intervene and to advise also our government so that the system would be more friendly to all citizens, not only Lithuanian speakers and not only those who are born in Lithuania.
Wow, fantastic. So I know we've got to get to all the countries. So I'm going to ask one last question just to Avi, which I've seen a lot of the questions that are coming in, is what is the cost of something like this?
I'd rather, well, Nida is here as well. We are colleagues. It is a cost, depends on how many clients. I mean, if a family, I got a family of 6 people, or is it a family of, is it 2 people or one single person? So the price changes actually, because obviously when I find documents in Lithuania, there is a cost of search. And the documents which are found in Lithuania can be used by all family members. So always a single application would be more expensive than the average price of an applicant when it is a family of 5 or 6. But we are definitely talking here about more than 1,000 euros.
All right. And people also want to know if you charge upfront or do you charge on cost of completion once the citizenship is obtained?
Okay, so the payment to me is usually split into 3 installments. I do charge very basic money for searching documents in Lithuania. Once I got the documents and the person is eligible, I can prove it, then I charge money. Again, a basic sum of money just for submitting the application. And most of the money is being paid only once application is approved.
So,
Correct.
guys, we've received more than 130 questions while you've been talking. So this is clearly a big hot button topic. We're going to come back to many of those questions towards the end of this evening. We want to thank Nida so much for joining us. Nida, you're going to come back for Q&A as well. But you've been one of the sponsors of tonight, and we're going to show your advert right now. And we're going to put both your details and Avi's details into the chat section as well. Please copy them out of the chat section. Let people contact you both. Avi, you had something to say?
Yeah. Nida, please confirm, as far as I know, because people must know the difference between citizenship and residency. Because although being citizens, Lithuanian citizens, you are not actually residents. This also applied for, actually I talk about the army, service in the army. As far as I know, there wasn't even one single case of South African resident who is also a Lithuanian citizen, both in South Africa and in Israel, that was actually forced to join the army, not willingly. Is that correct?
No, I must yet again to repeat that this citizenship is the same citizenship as you would have.
I'm talking about the facts. That in fact, nobody was actually drafted. Not being a resident in Lithuania if he was not volunteering to.
No, you are not correct. Of course. And I've heard of a case when people were stopped crossing the borders because Interpol was informed about them not showing up to the army and they were fined. So I've heard of those cases. And of course, no one, I mean, they can force you. I mean, they can force you. It's criminal. It's a criminal
Obviously,
offense
they can
if
do
you are
it.
not showing.
Okay.
Yes.
Avi and Nida, let's come back to this in question time. We've got so much still to cover.
Army is now really hot topic for the few days.
Hot topic. Let's come back to it a little later. Dan, as you queue up Nida's advert, we have a question about South Africans when traveling abroad. Is it correct that one should show your South African passport and other passport upon leaving? By South African law, you need to leave and enter South Africa on your South African passport. What you do with your other passport when you're out of the country is of no interest to the South African government at all. Dan, let's see from Nida. While on lockdown, why not spend some time researching your family history? Perhaps you're eligible to apply for a Lithuanian passport. Next Steps, Heritage and Beyond, your reliable partner in Lithuanian matters. Get in touch with Nida today on info@nextsteps.lt. That's info@nextsteps.lt. Nida, thank you so much. Your details are currently in the chat section as well, as are Avi's details. We're going to continue speaking to Avi about some other countries, but we're going to come back to you towards the end, and let's see how many questions we can get through then. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nida. All right, so there's a lot of questions that are coming in as well about Latvia. So obviously Latvia borders Lithuania, and obviously people were basically sort of their families could have come from either one of the two. So Avi, I don't know if you're still with us in terms of your video. Avi, are you able to put on your video?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Great, thank you. All right, perfect. So also we've had a lot of, as we're having those questions on Lithuania, a lot of questions have come in about Latvia. And are the requirements the same for people from a Latvian perspective in terms of the documentation and the different processes? Do you want to comment on that?
Well, yes. First of all, it is very important to know that the laws are similar. We are talking about the whole area. I mean, the whole of Europe was actually, until 1918, was split and ruled by three empires: Prussia, which is actually nowadays Germany, the Austro-Hungarian one, which was in the south, and then we got Russia, which nowadays Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, all of those countries were part of Russia. So just like in Lithuania, Latvia became an independent country only in 1918 when First World War ended. Only then they became an independent country. And in 1940, they were conquered and went under occupation again by Russia. So the period of time in which people could actually become Latvian citizens was actually between 1918 and 1940. Now, unlike Lithuanian law, with Latvia is a very big problem. Because according to Latvian law, if one left Latvia with no intention of coming back, or actually, in fact, did not come back prior, let's say, to 1939, sometimes even 1938 is good enough. So they consider that person as a person who actually renounced his Latvian citizenship. Sorry. So if one went for studies, I had a client coming, and they arrived to South Africa in 1927. Now, although their family stayed, their ancestry stayed in Latvia, but that certain person left and never came back. So they said, okay, you actually renounced your Latvian citizenship, and therefore your descendants are not eligible. Now, if one left, let's say 1937 for studies, or 1936, so obviously at this time, it was not the same like today that you can just buy tickets and almost everybody can afford to fly and go and back. So at the time, if you left in 1937, 1938, so you can actually claim that you did not have any intention of leaving forever, but you left for studies and you had intentions of coming back. But then in 1939, World War broke out, and therefore you were prevented from coming back. And then it was actually occupied by Russia, by the Soviet Union. So Whereas in Lithuania, you must have a registration of loss of citizenship. In Latvia, you don't really have to have a loss of citizenship. You have to prove that you were actually still registered, or that you lived or you were a resident in Latvia after 1930, I would like to say 1938, although some cases, even in 1937, it would be still okay.
Okay, perfect. And so basically you're saying that it's actually a bit harder to possibly to get
Much
the
harder.
Latvian.
Not a little harder, much harder. Because there were very few families that left Latvia after 1938, or even during 1939, 1940. Very few. And those people usually had contacts with the ambassador or some political people, positions that actually allowed them to leave the country after 1939. And at those times, if one left in 1936, usually for studies of whatever, they wouldn't come back after 6 months. That's just so a presence.
So Dina, in fact, Dan's going to put up a poll for us now. It would be really interesting to see which countries people are most interested in, if they think they should be applying for Latvia or Lithuanian or Polish or British. So Dan, can you put up that poll, and let's actually just get an understanding of the literally thousands of people who are watching us tonight. What are the key areas that people are looking at? So we're going to keep that poll up for probably another 20, 30 seconds or so. But Dina, I know you want to ask some questions about Poland while that in fact is going on.
Absolutely. So again, it does seem to be that's where the areas of interest are, based on what we've had a discussion on. So in terms of Poland as well, so what documentation is required for Poland? What are the requirements from an ancestry point of view? Give us some insight into that.
Are you talking to me, Dina? I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry, it was muted for a second. I didn't hear you. Could you please repeat the question?
All right. So we've also had a lot of interest in Poland. So what are the requirements from a Polish perspective? Okay. How do we go about that process?
All right. So the very first thing I'd like to mention about Poland, well, we just spoke about Lithuania, and now we're moving to speak about Poland. So we must remember that the borders were actually shifted after Second World War, or in the beginning of First World War. Because, for example, let's say the capital of Lithuania, Vilnius, used to be part of Poland from 1918 to 1939. So many people, they know that their ancestor, if it is grandfather or great-grandmother, came from Vilnius. And then they look at the map and say, okay, Vilnius is obviously the capital of Lithuania, then I'm Lithuanian. And the answer is no. If they left between 1918 and 1939, they were actually Polish. They were never Lithuanian, because that city was part of Poland. So they actually go to lawyers or to Jewish Gene or wherever, and they look for the names in Lithuanian archives, and they don't find it. And they think, okay, we're not eligible. But at the very same time, they might actually be eligible for the Polish citizenship. So this is the very first thing I wanted to mention. Now, once again, Poland, just like Latvia and Lithuania, was established and became an independent country in 1918. Unlike Latvia and Lithuania, Polish continued existing actually after 1939. And you could be actually a Polish citizen, not a Soviet one, in 1946 and in 1955. So this is a very big difference that we must keep in mind. As for the eligibility, you have to prove, unlike Lithuania, I always say unlike, because people heard about Lithuania, and it's very important for people to understand that. Nida mentioned before, and I agreed with her, I didn't mention it because Nida already said it, that Lithuania actually count only on their own archives, or mainly on their own archives. So if loss of citizenship was not registered in Lithuanian archives, so a person didn't lose his citizenship. So the meaning of that thing is actually that a person, even though he knows that his grandfather was naturalized in 1935, can always claim, I don't really know when was he naturalized. And then if this registration is not, if this thing is not registered in Lithuania, then he's still eligible. Now, in Poland, the law says you have to prove that your grandfather was not naturalized in South Africa or in other country prior to 1951, which is the date, actually January 19th, 1951. This is when Polish law was actually changed and allowed people to have dual citizenship. So this is another difference. So a person must actually show a document proving when was his ancestor naturalized. Now, if you cannot find your certification, the naturalization certificate, so you can actually come out with an idea of getting a letter confirmation that such a document cannot be found. So this is another thing. Another issue is serving in the army, because whereas the laws in all those three countries, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, did not allow having dual citizenship, in Poland, although obtaining dual citizenship prior to 1951, theoretically you should have lost your Polish citizenship, but you don't lose it, because according to Polish law, every male till the age of 50 was due to serve in Polish army. And then the law says a Polish citizen who was due to serve in Polish army wouldn't lose his Polish citizenship even though obtaining dual citizenship. That means that if one was actually naturalized in 1935 or 1948, but did not become 50 before 1951, so he wouldn't lose his Polish citizenship. And what we have to actually to do in that case is, even if we cannot prove when was one naturalized, we say, okay, you know what? We admit he was naturalized in 1935. Yes, but he didn't lose it because he was due to serve in Polish army. Now, the only thing we're going to have to prove is that he never joined a foreign army. So, for example, my clients, South African clients, what we do actually is we get a letter from South Africa Army saying their ancestor, if it's father or grandfather, sometimes both, never joined the army. And then we say, okay, you know what? You want to presume that he was naturalized 1935? Okay, I agree with you. He was. But he did not lose the Polish citizenship. And this is great. And this is a very good thing.
Those documentation, do you get that from, you need to get that from, in terms of to show the ancestry, do you get it from, are there archives in Poland that you go to? Or do you also come to the Home Affairs?
Poland, unlike Lithuania, it's not free archives. The documents are actually in each and every city hall or different local archives. So if one comes from a village, let's say very close to Warsaw, so that document might not be found in Warsaw. You have to go to that very specific village from which that person came from. So the work looking for documents is much harder. In Poland, I got a team of people, a few teams actually, in different cities in Poland, different areas and counties in Poland, and I send them to look for documents in archives according to the territory or to the county in which I'm looking for those documents. I would like to add one more thing, mentioning the thing with the army. Since Polish law, according to Polish law, women are not due to serve in the army. So unlike men, if a woman obtained a dual citizenship prior to 1951, so she would have lost, actually she lost her Polish citizenship on the spot because she had no protection of the Polish army law.
Okay, all right. So sure, looks like quite a complicated feat that we have over there. So I know there's lots of questions still coming in, which we're going to have to cover in the Q&A. But Avi, thank you so much. You're also one of our sponsors for this evening. So Dan is going to line up and play the video that we have from you. But thank you for your input. I know it's given lots of people food for thought, but we'll come back on the Q&A and answer some more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Most South African Jews of both Ashkenazi and Sephardi descent are entitled to European citizenship and accordingly an EU passport. Contact advocate Avi Koresh to discuss how you can obtain your EU passport based on your ancestry. Advocate Avi Koresh is often in South Africa and is happy to meet you to discuss your specific needs, or he is happy to set up a Zoom consultation during the period of lockdown. Please see details in the chat right now and WhatsApp or email Avi tonight.
Thank you so much. So we are going to be going now. We are going to be discussing with Lucia Goy Mastromicheli, I hope I got that right, about Portuguese passports based on Sephardic history. So we're just going to get her to unmute her screen. Let's just get her.
Yep, I'm unmuted, but I am not so loud.
Okay, Lucia, I've asked you to, okay, welcome to us from Madrid. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me and the interest.
So in fact, you specialize in ancestry reclaiming of citizenship for Sephardi Jews. You mentioned to us that Spain had a window of opportunity that was open. That window is now closed, but the Portuguese window is open. So tell us, what are the requirements that we have in order for people to regain citizenship of Portugal if they're Sephardi?
That is completely correct, Howard. Unfortunately, Spain had this law also. It's a reparation law. It grants the opportunity for Sephardi communities to go back to their roots, obtaining a European citizenship, Spain and Portugal. Spain finished, so now the only option on what we have to concentrate is in Portugal. The good news is the Portuguese process is actually a lot simpler. Why? You do not need to go sign in person. You can do everything through powers of attorney, which now in COVID times makes things a lot easier. You don't need to do a language test, which unfortunately Spain asks for that. So even though you may want to learn Portuguese, you're not obliged to. You don't have to do a cultural test, which that is some countries have also required. And even though the law requires some type of link, the link is considered to be sufficed if you will approve that you're from Sephardi descent. So how is the process? The process is actually quite simple. If you're Jewish, it's a lot simpler than if you're not Jewish, but it is very important to highlight that you do not need to be Jewish. You need to be Jewish or a descendant of a Jewish person, which is called anusim Jews. We need to think that this law is based on the law as a retribution of the law passed first by the Catholic King and Queen in 1942, which expelled the Jewish communities from Spain, and then Rey Manuel 2 years after from Portugal, and the persecution of the Inquisition. The vast majority, 80% of them, converted or tried to hide their religion or fled to other countries. So all of those descendants are also entitled to the law. It requires a little bit more time because we need to prove that ancestry and descendancy of Jewish practicant, but it is also possible. So to make it simple and easy, for a Jewish person, what are the requirements? Super easy. We need a family tree which proves a connection to a Sephardi country of origin. This can be Lebanon, this can be Syria, this can be Curaçao. We just need to see the family tree. It usually isn't more than 2-3 generations, so it's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. And then we need the certificate of an Orthodox rabbi saying this person is Jewish. That is for Jewish persons, which is the first step, which is getting the certificate saying that you're Jewish. That is for Jewish people. If you're a Nusim Crypto Jew.
Okay, let's stop there for a second just before we go on to that. So if someone who's Sephardi can produce a 3-generational family tree and a letter from a rabbi saying that they're Jewish, That, in fact, is all you require, all the documentation you require in order to apply for Portuguese citizenship.
As a first, we have to think there's two steps. First, we need to get the certificate that you're Jewish, and the only certificate that you're Jewish that the Portuguese government recognizes is their communities. So that is the first step. In order to get that Jewish certificate community, Portuguese community, yes, I only require that. And I don't sometimes even require 2 or 3 generations. I just need the generation up to where the last person in that tree that was born in a Sephardi country, which usually is Egypt, Syria, Lebanon. It depends, but it never goes up to more than 3 generations.
And does it apply? We have a lot of Jews in South Africa who have ancestry from Morocco, Libya,
Yes.
Tunisia. Does it apply to them as well?
100%. We have to think that the Sephardis mostly went to first Morocco, north of Africa, then to the Middle East, and then a lot also surprisingly went to Belgium, London, and then Netherlands. And from the Netherlands, they went to the colonies, which was Curacao, and then to Colombia, Venezuela, and Mexico. But yes, Morocco, Africa has a lot of Sephardis, the majority is Sephardis, because that was the initial reaction. Go down, which was the closest, and Melilla and Ceuta, for example, now have the majority of the community is Jewish.
Great. So that applies to, you said that's step number 1. They come and they produce the letter from the rabbi, the family tree. What happens at that point in time? How long does it take? What's the process?
For that documentation, I apply. We have an extremely good relationship with the portal. We've done like 800 already. They even of my surname, they like me. I want to think they like me. And we have a response in the same day or maximum 2 days, which is approval or we need more documentation. Once we have approval of the Jewish community, they issue us the certificate, and then yes, I'm going to have to pester the client with a little bit of burdensome work, but which is necessary in all nationalities, which is birth certificate apostilled, criminal records apostilled, a copy of your passport, and then some other documents that I just need them to sign, like authorizations, declaration of residence, why you want to be Portuguese. We produce all of those documents, but we do need from the client their birth certificate, obviously apostilled, the criminal records that they don't have anything messy around, and their passport. It's actually a pretty simple process. They send us the documents, we apply, because in Portugal you need to apply physically. We apply, they give us like a register number, which we see online. It's a 7-step process, which it calms your nerves because you see that it moves along. And that's about it. And in 8 to 16 months, we have an approval. Once you're approved, you're Portuguese. You don't need to do anything extra. Like for an example, in Spain, you had to jurar bandera, which I'm not sure how you say that in English, that you have to prove faith to a king, blah, blah, blah. In Portugal, you are Portuguese. Once you're approved, you're Portuguese, you go to the consulate and they give you your passport, and that's it.
So, Lucia, a number of people have asked us, they say their families landed up in Turkey or Greece or Rhode Island, but they're of Sephardi extraction. Are they still eligible?
100%. We need to think Turkey, Morocco, Greece, all these countries are where the Sephardi fled.
And what sort of cost is one looking at to do an application? Let us say they produce all the documents that you need in one shot. What sort of price is one looking at?
To be honest, Howard, I don't like to talk about cost because every case is a different case, and we do honor and we do pride ourselves in tailor-made solutions. So one cost doesn't fit all, but it is a very accessible. It is accessible to any person. We're talking a lot less than 10K and a lot less. So it's
10K in which currency?
In euros, even less than 5K. So it's never going to go over 5K. I just want to give you a round basis. I don't want to give an exact number because after all, for example, we have a client now. He was born in Egypt. He left us a refugee. We've nightmare to get a birth certificate as a refugee. Because if you leave under your 18, you don't need the third birth certificate. But if you leave over your 18, Portuguese law requires the birth certificate. That has been one of the most difficult tasks in my life, I have to be honest. Speaking to the Egyptian consulate and getting that birth certificate. So obviously it's talking about a fixed price, because if we take the commitment with a client, we're going to go all the way to get that passport if he is eligible, because that is literally his ancestral right.
Right. Do you know how many people from South Africa have in fact applied for Portuguese citizenship?
I think the numbers are not that high. From us, we've done 10, but the numbers from South Africa, unfortunately, have not been high. I think it's not that popularly known. And then while the Jewish community is going to be pretty easy, I do not think there's going to be a lot of Anusim crypto Jews in South Africa. The Jewish community, probably the majority are going to have some type of Sephardi root, even if they don't think so, because the fact that they're in Africa makes you very, very probably Sephardi. But Anusim, I do not think. The Anusim mostly went to Latin America.
And there's a question that comes in: if one member of the family applies, does it then apply to the children as well? Is this one application? How would it work if there was an entire family involved?
So unfortunately, underage kids, so that in Portugal is that less than 18, cannot apply to this law. They're not. They need to be over 18 in order for them to be able to apply. If the father or mother converts and becomes Portuguese, they can make the kids Portuguese as long as they are under 18, not because of Sephardi, but because they're the son of a Portuguese person. So if they're over 18, they need to do the individual process, and if they're under 18, once the mother or father is Portuguese, we make them Portuguese.
Great. Now, Avi, I know you wanted to comment. This is something that you do as well.
Yeah, well, obviously, since I mostly work in Israel, and in Israel, the number of people of Sephardi heritage is larger than in South Africa. So I do that, but I also do that in South Africa. And I would like to expand what Joy mentioned about Jews of Sephardic heritage, because, well, as we all know, that after the explosion, Jews spread it all over, not mainly, I would say, to Turkey and Greece and North Africa, but not only. Also, people that landed in Bulgaria, in Yugoslavia, in Holland, are considered to be Jewish of Sephardic heritage. Now, sometimes the last name is enough to prove that, but in many other cases, that last name is not, for example, because only their, let's say, their maternal grandfather or maternal grandmother was of the Sephardi heritage, and all the other three were actually Ashkenazi. So the last name is Ashkenazi one. So there are other different ways of proving their Sephardi heritage, and this is something that I also do.
All right, and so it's only any of those grandparents. So you just have to show that one grandparent had
enough. Even one of your 4 grandparents, even one of 8 great grandparents. I would even say one of 16 of your great grandparents.
You just need one. Sorry if I interrupt. So, for example, Israel says that you need 3 in order to do Aliyah and convert, that one of your 3 grandparents or 4 grandparents, I don't remember, because Nazi regime said that if you had tainted, that was based on tainted blood of 4 generations. The Inquisition was much worse. The Inquisition said 1 drop of Jewish blood, whatever generation, makes you tainted. So the law specifically says that in order to palliate what the Inquisition said, 1 spot of Jewish blood enables
That's
you.
Correct. I confirm. That's correct. Yeah, that's a very nice spot to enlighten.
So the last question, Lucia, is a question I asked you actually in the beginning, but we've had so many comments and questions. The name of your law firm, Goy Gentile, is in fact your name and one of the other partners' names. They are genuine names. They have been put together because it's a genuine law firm and it's reflective of the partners of that law firm.
It is the law. It's the surnames of our law firm. We actually thought of changing the name, but we take a lot of pride in our surnames. As I said to you before, Howard, both are very anusim, and we have now well, you've met one of them, 3 Jewish associates. So we are all inclusive and very, very close to the Jewish community, and if not half Jewish already.
Thank you so much. And really appreciate the fact that, in fact, Goy Gentile, in fact, is one of the sponsors of tonight's program, and we'd love to see a little ad from you guys. Goy Gentile Lawyers is an internationally recognized, award-winning law firm. The sum of the international experience of our team makes us a firm with a solid background in the most competitive legal markets in the world. To date, we have processed more than 2,000 passports based on Sephardic origins. Go to www.goygentile.com and start your journey in obtaining your Portuguese passport today. So contact us now, www.goygentile.com. Thanks so much, Dina. Just very quickly before we go on to investment visas, Avi, if we can bring you back for one moment, because you actually also deal with a few other countries. You deal with Greece, Turkey, Holland, Rhodes. Give us literally 1 minute about that.
Okay. So actually, I do not deal with the Greek passport or Italian or Bulgarian one, because the Jews living in those countries are actually considered and recognized as Jews of Portuguese heritage. So whenever I have a client that his ancestry are from those countries, or even Yugoslavia, sorry. So what I do for them is the Portuguese one.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. That's
there is one more thing that I wanted to say. Goy mentioned before the criminal record. I would like to expand one more thing here. The thing is, with the criminal record, many people think if they have like a small crime or sin or whatever, so they're not eligible anymore. And the Portuguese law actually specified that he must be convicted with a felony, on which the Portuguese law, the punishment by Portuguese law is 3 years in jail. Please confirm, Goy.
So the Portuguese law is very exigente, demanding with criminal records. For example, Spain only requires criminal records of the last 5 years of the country of origin and the country of the last 5 years you resided. Portugal requires criminal records of all the countries you resided over 18, which is insane, but they do. However, if it's not in the passport, really, it's very difficult to prove that. But yes, to answer your question, criminal records, they need to be a felony. They're not a misdemeanor. But when you request the criminal records, for example, the FBI criminal records, it shouldn't appear if it's not a felony. There are countries that do put it and it puts misdemeanor, but you do explain that because we need to translate it. And when you translate it, if the translator is a good translator, and if not, you should tell him to put it as you want.
Good one, I love this one.
You translate it for him in order to make sure that it says misdemeanor and not felony.
Okay, guys, we have many questions that we'll ask you in the Q&A section. Thank you both for joining us this evening. Dina, we've kind of dealt with a lot of the ancestry. We haven't gotten through every country, but ancestry is not the only way that we can get citizenship of another country or residence of another country. There are a number of countries that have schemes that allow you to almost buy residence. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes. You can definitely, there are various countries that have various investment options where the amounts vary per country and the rights vary per country, as do the processes and the requirements. But lucky we have the experts on our panel this evening who can help shed some light on this.
So welcome, Joseph Barnett. Joseph, you joining us from Los Angeles at the moment?
Yes, I am. Good to be here.
Great to have you with us. We were talking earlier that the most famous immigration attorney in America is in fact the senior partner of your law firm, Bernie, the attorney, the person that almost every South African who's ever wanted to go to the United States has in fact used.
Yep, he is a very popular attorney. He's been doing this for 40 years. I've been doing immigration for 10 years, specializing in EB-5, which is the investment regime so that you can get green card in the United States. But we have helped literally thousands of families over many decades come over to the United States and start a new life here and be successful. Absolutely.
So just before we go on to EB-5, and that will be the main crux of what we're talking about tonight, but are there other ways that you can, in fact, get a green card or American residence? Is the lottery, for example, still in operation at the moment? Is there standard immigration, or has that been stopped by Donald Trump?
Sure, it's a great question. And to sort of clarify based on what some of the other panelists were saying before is that there are big differences between citizenship, having a green card, which is permanent residency, and being in the United States on a temporary work visa or a student visa. So, you know, what I always try to talk about is climbing the immigration ladder. Many folks come to the United States on a temporary work visa or a student visa. Then maybe they get an employer to sponsor them. Maybe they can get a green card eventually and get that lawful permanent residency. And then once you have 5 years of that green card status, you can apply for naturalization and become a US citizen. But for a green card specifically, there are generally 5 ways that you can do it. 1 is have an employer sponsor you. 2, have a close family member sponsor you. 3, invest like EB-5. 4, do some sort of asylum or refugee status, which isn't available to South Africans at this time. And 5th is that diversity lottery visa, which is 55,000 visas that are given out every year. The only thing that you need to show is that you have a high school education and are at least 18 years old. And as of this time, that is still moving forward. President Trump has not stopped that program from moving forward. However, because of COVID and because of the opportunity that came about, he has sort of used the situation as a way to restrict folks from getting visas and getting into the United States. So unless you are eligible for some sort of an exemption or some sort of waiver or some sort of, national interest exception to these visa bans. And that's why it's so important to be working with an experienced immigration attorney who literally every day there are new updates that come out from the Department of State or from the Trump administration or from USCIS, and you need that attorney to be staying on top of it so that they can give you the best advice that is compliant with the ever-changing requirements that is going on.
But you can, in fact, buy permanent residence in the United States for yourself and your family, and that's called the EB-5 visa. Is that correct?
Correct. It's you make an investment in a U.S. company, and that company needs to create jobs for U.S. workers. So when I think of EB-5, I think about it as a job creation program with an immigration benefit. Because if the company that you invest in doesn't create all of the jobs that are required, then you don't get that full immigration benefit. And so doing your due diligence on the different project options that are out there is incredibly important and probably something that you should be talking to your financial advisors in South Africa or migration advisors who can help do that financial due diligence on the project. Because I'll say this, when it comes to EB-5, you're a relatively passive investor. You are giving your money to a developer to spend that money and develop some sort of real estate project, whether it's a hotel or an assisted living, like a nursing home facility, or maybe it is a residential development. There are lots of different factors that go into which type of investment decision you want to make. And a lot of times that can just be a personal decision. My job as the immigration attorney is to make sure that that project that you choose complies with EB-5 rules, which are constantly changing. and making sure that that process of you coming in and getting your green card goes as smooth as possible. Because this is a multiple year process, and you need a short-term immigration strategy and a long-term immigration strategy. And that's what we provide as Wolfsdorf attorneys, is we really help you and your family the entire way through. EB-5 allows the investor's spouse, and any unmarried children under the age of 21 to get that green card based on the investment.
So how much is the investment? What's the minimum amount that you need to put in?
Right now, that minimum investment amount is $900,000 US. It can also be $1.8 million if the investment project is not located in what they call a targeted employment area, which is a rural area or an area that has high unemployment, 150% of the national unemployment rate. And so as the unemployment rate goes up because of COVID, that has implications on what qualifies, but that data is really updated only once a year or once every couple of years. And so the impacts of COVID have not been put into the calculations yet for unemployment. So there are projects today that can still qualify for that lower investment amount, 900,000, despite some of these, circumstances that are happening in the U.S. economy these days.
So let us be quite specific of what sort of things qualify. If I go and buy an apartment in New York, does that qualify?
No.
If I go and invest in a development that has yet to be built in Florida, is that a qualifying?
Potentially, yes. You need to show that your money is being invested in that company and that it is being used to develop that project. And it's some sort of commercial basis to the project. Purchasing an apartment or a condo in New York or anywhere for that matter, that doesn't create jobs. You're just giving money to the prior owner of that real estate asset. What EB-5 is, it's a job creation program. And so what they use is these economic multipliers that say, hey, for every $1 million that you spend on construction of a development in Florida, 12 jobs are created. So you know that if you spend $30 million on construction of a development in Florida, I'm making these numbers up, that 360 jobs are created even before that development opens up for business. And so that's a way that you can mitigate your risk, is by going with a project where there is a developer that has a track record of success, that they've done EB-5 in the past, and that you're minimizing any sort of conflict of interest that could potentially disrupt your green card process. And I will say this, before you move on to the question, I just wanted to mention is that we have a lot of clients who are South African who use their ancestral passport or maybe their investment passport to a second country, and they use that to come into the United States on an E2 visa. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but it is a separate visa option for those who aren't necessarily looking for a green card, but still want to open up a business in the United States and be able to come in every now and again to run and operate it. You're allowed to do that because certain countries like Lithuania, Poland, Spain, Latvia, Turkey have these treaties with the US government that South Africa does not.
So it allows me to open a business, come in and work in that business, but maybe not get a green card, which is permanent residence.
You got that exactly right. And actually there could be some great tax implications as well, because once you spend 183 days in the United States, then you're considered a US person for tax. And so if you don't want to be in the United States, or you want to keep assets away from Uncle Sam, then maybe the E2 is a better option for you if you're only going to be coming in, every once in a while.
So give us an example of 2 or 3 examples of the sort of things that you've seen clients invest in.
Sure. There are 3 big types of projects that I think in EB-5. One is some sort of hotel development or some, let me say this, EB-5 is generally real estate based. And the reason why is as long as the building that is being developed gets built, jobs are created. And so you don't necessarily rely on the viability of the business to get your green card. which is based on job creation. Whether you get your money back at the end of the process, now that obviously depends on where you invest. And so there are some projects where, you know, they may feel safer investing in a residential development project in Southern California. In the past, I think, you know, there have been larger projects that have been more focused in New York and in Florida. But then they changed these rules at the end of 2019 to spur development in more rural areas or less tier 1 areas. And so now we're starting to see projects go away from New York, away from Florida. And the reason why is because they can qualify for that lower investment amount, whereas before they weren't able to.
That's fantastic and very useful information. We're going to see an advert from your law firm, and we're going to post the details of the law firm into the chat section. But stay on the line, because we're also going to talk to Rael Simkin, and I'm sure there's a lot that you'd like to comment on as well when it comes to that section. So Dan, please play us the ad.
Thank you, Howard.
Meet WR Global Immigration, a full-service immigration law firm specializing in U.S. as well as global immigration. Our skilled attorneys have unmatched knowledge in employment, family, and investment-based visa and green card options. WR is ranked by U.S. News, Best Lawyers, and Chambers and Partners as a Tier 1 immigration law firm. Contact us now at visalaw@woolsdorf.com and mention South African Jewish Report for a free consultation.
Thanks, Joseph. We're going to put the details of Woolsdorf attorneys into the chat section now, and we're going to bring on Rael. Rael, welcome. Great to see you.
Hey, Howard. Hi, everybody.
Hi. We only think part of it. Oh, okay. That's much better. You've been involved in immigration law in South Africa for many, many years. Is that correct?
That's correct. I initially started this getting involved in ancestral citizenship way back in 2013. And during the course of last year, I introduced the EB5 investment visa.
So now, Rael, we have foreign exchange control to some degree still in South Africa. Sure. How does it work with EB5? How do we get money out of South Africa in order to invest in one of these projects?
Okay. So taking into account that the minimum investment amount is $900,000, so that approximates to 15 million rand. Now in South Africa, in order to transfer funds offshore, we've got to meet the exchange control requirements. So an individual you have a discretionary allowance of 1 million rand, and then there's a foreign allowance, a foreign investment allowance of a further 10 million rand. Now, in order to get approval to transfer that 10 million rand, you need to apply to SARS. So you need to apply to the South African Revenue Service. You need to provide proof of source of where those funds are. And also you need to prove that that money is in the account. Now, something that's very important is that you've got to make sure that all your ducks are in a row, all your other tax affairs are in a row, because they won't give you approval to transfer that 10 million unless all your other affairs are in order. They'll delay the process. So that's something to know. You can apply for this yourself. You can actually do it on SARS e-filing, or you can utilize a third party. But just bear in mind, make sure that all your other tax affairs are in a row. Now that takes you up to, that is 11 million rand. For the additional 4 million, what is the best way to do it? So we find that the best way to do it is actually to use your spouse's foreign investment allowance. So you can utilize 4 million of her 10 million. Basically, it's the simplest approach. There is another approach where you can apply for the full amount under your own name, but again, it's very onerous and the conditions are very tedious. And ultimately, you want a simple option to be able to get those funds offshore as simply as possible. So that is the simplest option. The other option, again, is if you've got the funds offshore, that's first prize, because that means that you don't have to go through the rigmarole of dealing with SARS and getting, just going through the whole long process.
All right. And sorry, Rel, I just want to ask you as well. So obviously you said you've got to have your ducks in a row and you've obviously got to have the documentation that you're making this investment. So what do you start first? Do you start the the E5 process first, or do you start actually the approval process to get the funds offshore?
So actually, you would the best approach is actually to start with SARS first, because that process takes time. So always a good idea to start off with SARS and get all your documentation, in order and start that application process. You can do it together with starting, the other part of the application process for the EP5 investment visa, but I always recommend that you get started with SARS first.
All right. And do you have options in terms of those investments? So Joseph talked about obviously real estate investments, etc. How do you know what to invest in?
Okay. So that's really where we come in. Traditionally, the EP5 investment visas are made up of real estate. And ultimately, it's very difficult. How do you know what is a good project? So that's where we come in, is we do a due diligence on the available projects. And we see, we see what is the best project. In other words, what's the project that has the lowest risk, that has the best, that is most likely to deliver your that is most likely to deliver your green card and has the lowest risk of not returning your funds back to you. Now, something to take into account with the EP5 investment visa is that at the end of the process, so as Joseph said, in order to get the green card, you've got to do two things. You've got to make the minimum investment, and you've also got to prove that you've created 10 jobs for US workers. So ultimately, you want a project that meets those requirements. And you also want a project that is going to be able to return those funds at the end of the day. Those are the things that we look at when we do the due diligence on these projects.
All right. And once you've actually got the investment, do you have to go and physically live in the States?
You don't have to go live in the States. So there are different options. Okay. From when you start the process, you're looking at approximately, if let's say you made the investment now, you are looking at approximately 18 months to 2 years before you get the conditional green card. Once you've got the conditional green card, all your rights and obligations take place. So that basically means you've got the ability to live, work, study in the States. And that takes place from when you get your green card. Something that is very important also just to take cognizance of, and I'm really just zooming in here as the South African person over here, is a taxation point of view, is that when you acquire the green card, that you become eligible for taxation on your worldwide income by virtue of holding your green card. So it's something that's really important to take cognizance of. We do find sometimes that some of the foreign providers don't always prep people about the tax implications. Mm-hmm. So we work very carefully with tax experts here in South Africa and in the States to make sure that all your tax affairs are adequately taken care of.
Rel, may I ask you, there have been so many questions that have come in about people who need information or documentation from Home Affairs.
Yes.
And I'm sure for an EB5, you probably need birth certificates and proof of residence, etc. And people are saying during COVID, they've been unable to get anything out of Home Affairs. Do you have any solutions, or is this just something you have to sit out and wait?
So unfortunately, Home Affairs is a very challenging issue now. I certainly feel for the people who are handling, some of the ancestral citizenship where it's very difficult to get things out of Home Affairs at the best of times. But generally, generally the important things that you need, the documentation from Home Affairs is fairly simple for the EP5 investment visa. Generally, you need birth certificates, marriage certificate, and you need valid passport. And generally, those birth certificates are coming out of Home Affairs at the moment.
All right.
Cool.
And Rel, also just in terms of, just in terms of you said obviously the time that it takes and everything like that. So does the taxation only start as you get that actual green card and then you have to start.
Correct. So when you acquire the green card, that is when you become liable as a U.S. taxpayer from when you get that green card. Now, the thing is, it takes 2 years to get to that point, and you can utilize that to your advantage because there's a lot that you have to go through in order to do adequate tax planning, to do estate planning, etc. So you need to utilize that time effectively. The other thing that I find some of our clients is if they don't actually want to get hooked in the US tax net, so to speak. So the other option is the spouse who has the lower taxable liability, so to speak, they can actually become the primary applicant. And at a later date, they can add the other spouse, if they wanted to join on at a later stage. That's something to bear in mind. Also, just in terms of children, if you wanted to stay out of the tax net and you wanted your children to have the EB-5 investment visa, you could actually loan them the funds and they could then purchase the investment visa themselves. So that's also something to keep in mind.
But I would assume it would have an age limit. You're not going to have an 8-year-old who's buying the visa. So is it over 18?
So if you're getting it as an entire family, so the EB-5 investment visa covers you, let's say you, the investor, covers your spouse, covers your children if they're under 21 years old. Now, provided the application has been filed while they're under 21, they're covered. So even once they tick over 21, they're covered. If your children are going to apply by themselves, so in other words, you're going to loan them the money, there's no age limit. They could apply before they're 21. They could apply, when they're over 21. That doesn't matter.
Rel, give us 1 or 2 examples just before Dina takes us to your ad, but 1 or 2 examples of the sort of projects that you've recommended to clients and what sort of return that they can look at.
Sure. So generally the projects are real estate. They are real estate investment projects. Generally the funds are loaned. Okay. Let me go back a step. So effectively, you make an investment into an investment fund. Okay. That fund then loans the money to what we call a job creation entity, and that could be the real estate project. And that's really over here where you meet the EB-5 job creation requirements. And then basically those funds are loaned for 5 years, between 5 to 7 years. So the initial loan period is 5 years with a two-year optional extension period. There is nominal interest that is paid. So you're looking at roughly 0.5% every year. That's simple interest. And then again, at the end of the process, so once you've proved to the US government that you have created those 10 jobs, okay, and you have made the requisite investment, you can get those funds back. There are other projects that give a much higher rate of return. Generally, we always favor projects with a low risk basis. So in other words, you're going to get your money back, okay, and that those requirements are going to be fulfilled, that you're going to get your EB-5 investment visa.
So Dina, last question for Joe before we go to Rail's advert. Joe, tell us, once we've gotten a green card and we're in the United States, how long until citizenship?
You can apply for citizenship 5 years after getting your conditional green card status. So 5 years in the United States. If you end up spending more than 6 months out of the United States in one moment, that kind of resets that 5-year period. So there are some other requirements needed for naturalization that are not there if you just want to maintain your green card. But if the goal is to become a US citizen and you remain in the United States, 5 years.
All right, sorry, can I just ask that question just to clarify? What is the difference between the green card and actual citizenship in terms of rights?
It's a great question. They have a lot of the same rights and responsibilities. The big differences are, one, as a green card holder, you can't vote. And two, if you do something really terrible, like commit a crime, then you can get deported and put in deportation proceedings. But in terms of, your rights to send your kids to public school, your rights under the Constitution to file, to go into court, all of that, your First Amendment, all of those rights are the same as a US citizen, as a green card holder. Really, it comes down to voting and being able to not get kicked out of the country if you commit a crime. You're going to jail, you're not going back home.
Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you so much. That was super interesting. And thank you, Rael. And with that, Rael, we'd like to show your ad, and thank you as well for your sponsorship. And thank you both really for that input. I think it was hugely insightful.
Are you looking to immigrate to the USA and need someone you can trust to guide you through the process? No Borders has built its reputation over the last 8 years, assisting hundreds of applicants from across the world to acquire foreign citizenship. We specialize in providing a complete solution in terms of the EB-5 investment visa to the USA. This program offers high net worth individuals the opportunity to obtain a green card for themselves and their family by making a qualifying investment in the USA. For more information, please contact Rael Sinkin from No Borders. Bless you, Dina. Did I see you sneeze during that advert?
I did indeed, but I muted my sneeze.
As they say, you sneeze on the truth. So Dina, we're going to do a very quick poll again. We want to understand, Dan's going to put up this poll on what best describes you. Are you looking for a second passport? Have you already applied for a passport? You already have a second passport? You're happy to stick with your South African passport, or your primary passport is not South African? We'd really like to hear from people and understand what you're looking for out of this entire process. So we're going to keep the poll up for probably about another 30 seconds or so. We'd love you to vote and to understand exactly what you're looking for out of our panel this evening. And I can tell you the results are pouring in, and there are so many people currently looking for a second passport. We'll give you the results in about 20 seconds time. And straight after that, we're going to speak to Sandra Wust. And Sandra, who's joining us from Cape Town, is going to talk to us about golden visas for Spain, for Portugal, the United Kingdom. Also, she's going to deal with Malta, Montenegro, the Caribbean islands, Ireland. There seem to be so many opportunities. So just to share the results of that poll with you, you will see that in fact 64% of people watching are actually actively looking for a second passport, that 16% have already applied, and 16% already have received their second passport.
Wow, that's a big number if you combine it together.
Exactly. So with
96% of people here who are either looking for a passport or already in the process or have one.
So Sandra, a big welcome to you. Let's unmute you over there.
Hi, thank you, Howard.
Welcome to you. You're joining us from the Western Cape. You're overlooking False Bay if it's still light outside, but I imagine it's fairly dark at the moment. But you have some other alternate ideas of where you can, in fact, invest, get citizenship, or alternative ways to get into America without going through the EB-5 process.
Yes, so I've basically been helping, especially South Africans, but a lot of people from Southern Africa, even Northern Africa, UAE, to obtain what people used to call the Plan B, not necessarily wanting to leave South Africa, but as you mentioned earlier, and Dina as well, traveling on a South African passport is an absolutely nightmare. So I have a lot of business people who have acquired second passports specifically for that travel privilege, even if it's just for flying into the UK for a quick meeting, or taking his family on vacation, or constantly having to visit different countries, following one another, and then your passport is at this embassy for a visa, but after that you need to go to another country. and you really just get stuck. And actually, it puts financial pressure on your business. And as you said, it takes a week to gather all of these documents and 3 months bank statements and so forth. So there's a lot of programs that we offer that a family can relocate, they can immigrate at any given time, they can use it as a plan B, or they can simply use the document as a travel document. Or what a lot of South African families do is they say, we're very settled, we have our business, we might have older parents that we feel responsible for, but when it comes to our children, we want them to have an open world, we want them to have choices, we want them to you spoke about, when you have EU citizenship, that you can study in any of the European countries. We want to
So,
give
Sandra,
them
I don't think we have to convince people of the benefits. Let's talk about some of the countries. Give us very briefly, almost 30 seconds per one, golden visa for Spain, golden visa for Portugal, Ireland, the Caribbean, Montenegro, Malta. Tell us what's available.
Okay. Spain is a popular program around the world. Basically, €500,000 into property, very straightforward. You purchase the property, you get your residence, and you become a Portuguese, Spain resident.
Does it apply to you and your family?
Yes. And it includes your dependent children. And should you spend enough time in Spain, then it could eventually lead to citizenship, but you're going to have to make Spain your new home. That compares very much to the Portuguese program, who also has a €500,000 property investment. They also have now new options where if you invest in an area that's less densely populated, such as Porto, you can invest 350,000, and there's even areas where you can invest €280,000. You get your Portuguese residence. You need to maintain the investment. You need to spend some time. It's 14 days every 2 years in Portugal. And after 5 years, if you pass the Portuguese language test, you and your family can obtain citizenship, and each family member is on their own clock and their own tests. So your kids might pass the language test if they learn the language, you might not. That has become a very, very popular plan B for South Africans because Portugal has really nice weather and they see themselves retiring there. Then we have the UK program, which is the Tier 1. That I have had very few Southern African clients that actually did the UK program. It is a £2 million investment into financial vehicles into the UK. And with Brexit, that has been hanging over everybody's heads and has eventually happened. People, unless they specifically want the UK, were stepping back from the Tier 1 and rather moving to the Irish program. The Irish program is €1 million, so it's much less than the £2 million. Again, it's a 5-year program. You need to make Ireland your main home. You need to spend most of your time during a 5-year period in Ireland to obtain citizenship. And again, it includes your dependent children that can be included in the application. What's nice about Ireland is now that Brexit has happened, that is one of the few passports that gives you full EU and specifically also UK access. So you can live, work, and study irrespective of what Brexit the UK negotiate with any of the countries. You will have a passport that will give you access to both sides. Other options that gives you full EU citizenship, which Jenny will tell us more about, is the Cypriot one, very straightforward with a real estate investment. That competes basically with the Malta program. Malta has 2 options. You have the residential visa permit program where you can invest in government bonds and get Maltese residence for your family. You can live, work, and study in Malta and travel through the Schengen area. So it's pretty much in line with the Portuguese and the Spain visas that gives you visa-free traveling in Schengen, but you can only work, live in, study in that specific country. Germany in Solingen has the same type of program. Again, it's a €350,000 investment. It's also a Schengen country, gives you the same options. Then the Malta Citizenship Program is really more for your ultra high net worth. The biggest capital layout is a contribution to the Government Development Fund. And on average for a family, it would you would need a capital layout of about 20 to 24 million rand, depending on whether you're going to lease or purchase property. But that gives you full EU citizenship with a passport that also gives you visa-free travel to the United States. And it's a really strong and respected passport to have. Other options that is currently available that is very popular for South Africans is the Montenegro program. Now, Montenegro currently is part of the Schengen, but not yet part of the EU. They have applied and they first in line currently to join the EU in 2025. According to the EU Commission, they're very well on track. So their investment is much lower than Cyprus and Malta, which is full EU countries, or the UK or Ireland. It's really great investments. You can rent it out. You can have a really great investment return. Once they join the EU, obviously your property would go up in value. And that passport gives you visa-free travel, not only to the Schengen area, but to 123 countries. So again, for the businessman, it's an absolutely wonderful document to travel on. And should you need to leave South Africa and retire, Montenegro is a beautiful, clean, well-run, stable country. They're one of the countries part of the geographical European area with the lowest tax, even inheritance tax and capital gains tax. Really, really great destination. And they also have the treaty with the US, the same as Ireland, where for a family that have significant funds and can make an investment into a company or start a new little business, creating only 2 jobs on the E2 visa, as Joey mentioned, they can actually make the United States their new home. Another option that is also an E2 treaty country with the States is one of the Caribbean islands. Now,
just before we get on to that, what is the minimum investment in Montenegro?
Montenegro has 2 options. If you buy coastal line or in Podgorica, your real estate is 450,000 euros, and there's a 100,000 euro contribution.
Cool.
So compared to Malta, that is way less. And once they join the EU, you would have a passport that is just as strong. If you want to spend less, you can buy property inland, more where there's hiking trails, of 250,000 euros, and then again the 100,000 euro government contribution. Children
so you were going to tell us about the Caribbean.
Yeah, sorry, just on Montenegro, children can be included as long as you can prove that they're financially dependent on the main applicant and the spouse. Then compared to that, another E2 treaty country from the Caribbean is specifically Grenada. Now, we have had so many Southern African clients and from Dubai and Qatar, all doing the Grenada passport. It gives you visa-free travel to 143 countries. This includes the whole of the EU and specifically the UK being a a Commonwealth country. And they pretty much, their parliament is still ruled by the Queen of England. So they're a fairly stable country. The developments that we work with, where clients invest in, is very stable developments, really great resorts. You need to hold on to the property, the same as Montenegro, for 5 years. You get a rental income. After 5 years, you can sell the property. And the property investment is $220,000. And there's a $50,000 government contribution. On that passport, not only do you have the travel privilege and you can live on any of the 9 Commonwealth Caribbean islands, but again, by making a small investment, and there's by law no minimum amount into the States, as long as you do something where you're going to create 2 jobs that was non-existent before, you can move your family to the United States on the E2 visa. Now, talking a little bit more about the E2 visa compared to the EB5, the EB5 is still the best route to get your family into the United States and get them to citizenship. But you need to know that there's a timeline. Like Real said, it's basically a 2-year application process. You need to step foot in the United States to activate that visa, and you need to know that you need to spend the majority of your time over a 5-year period, but then you get full US citizenship. On the E2, you have the privilege to work, live, and study in the United States as long as you maintain that investment and creates those 2 jobs. Once your children age out, you either may need to make an investment and create 2 more jobs on their name, or they would have to leave the States. What a lot of my South Africans says, they have young children, they want to go to school to the United States and to university, and hopefully being brought up there, they would marry a United States national and get married, and that way get to stay in the United States. So that's pretty much their plan of action. But those are really great options for South Africans as a plan B, not needing to specifically leave immediately, but have it in your back pocket and have a great travel document. So there are options, a lot of options. This is just a few of the options for those people that is not as lucky as some of us are, that can go back and claim ancestral citizenship and have alternative routes. It's more costly.
So Sandra, can we just, is there a path to citizenship for someone who's entered the United States on an E2 visa?
Yes, it's not easy, but say for instance, you do grow a company that eventually you create 10 jobs that you can maintain and sustain in a TAA area. You can convert your E2 into an EB5 for a 5-year period. In that way, then convert and qualify for citizenship. And
you don't have to top up the amount of money that you've put in.
No, as long as your investment grows and as long as you create those 10 jobs. And this is something that a legal firm like, for instance, Worsdorf can help you with at the time that your company has grown to such an extent. So it's not impossible, but it's not easy.
So Sandra, just in summary, before we come to your advert, I just want to run through all the services that you can offer people. So it's investment visas for Spain, Portugal, the United Kingdom, Ireland, Cyprus, Greece, Montenegro, the Caribbean islands, Malta, and Germany.
Yes, pretty much that. There's a few smaller ones that we also do, but for South Africans specifically, those are the ones that we focus on.
And you have cheaper ways than an EB5 to get into the United States if you create 2 jobs, going through the Caribbean, somewhere like Grenada, where you can invest, you can get a Grenadian citizenship and then invest a smaller amount in the United States, move your family there, and then hopefully over a period of time convert that E2 into an EB5.
Yeah. We have a lot of families that unfortunately missed the bus on last year when it was increased for the EB5 from 500 to 900, and they just couldn't make the 900. So their best route was either go through Montenegro or go through the Caribbean option. And going through the Caribbean Grenada option, it cost the family about $320,000. So they still have money left to actually go and invest in something small. I had 2 dentists and an optometrist that used the investment, and they went and opened practices in the United States, making that their investment. The 2 jobs they created was pretty much a receptionist and a hygienist for the dentist. And on that Caribbean passport, they actually moving their families to the States, keeping in mind that it's not really a path to citizenship, but they can live in the United States because they just didn't have that $900,000 to invest in an EB5.
Sandra, it's amazing to know there really are options. It's a complicated thing. We're going to watch your advert now. Dan's going to put all of your details into the chat section. I'm sure there'll be many people with many questions, and you seem to have so many opportunities that people can go explore. So thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Pleasure.
Cool. Thanks, Sandra. And Dina, I think we may potentially have left the best opportunity to last.
Absolutely. Listen, I was also sold on the Montenegro part. It also sounds amazing. Apparently, it's a great place to keep your boat, your yacht.
Fantastic.
Dina, if I can interrupt quickly there, Montenegro these days is seen as the cheaper Monaco. Because of the tax, it's much cheaper to keep your yacht there, and obviously, you know, to have a holiday. And there's options for tax planning and money hiding, quote unquote, that is much better than the Monaco option. So a lot of my clients are actually moving assets from Monaco to Montenegro, just between you and me.
And just between us friends over here. Fantastic. Good to know.
But Jenny, we mentioned earlier when Dina and I were preparing for this, we were looking at pictures of Cyprus, and we were absolutely so jealous. It looks like the most perfect place in the world you'd want to go live.
Yeah, I mean, Howard, it's just got so much that is appealing for South Africans. I have quite a few of my Jewish clients who have decided to relocate there, because literally Cyprus is an hour and 10 minutes flight across the pond. So as we jokingly say, by the time you've opened your packet of crisps, you're already on the descent, and you're either heading towards Tel Aviv or you're heading towards Cyprus. So there's a very, very strong link between both countries, but it's the Mediterranean lifestyle that people are buying into when it comes to looking at that particular option. And the other big important factor is, and not discounting any of the other countries, but being an ex-British colony, Cyprus has got no language barrier. So for those potential investors who are looking at that as a potential plan B, whether it's a short-term interest right now, or I want to relocate with mom, dad, and the kids, or I want to get my children into the English-speaking medical school, which is recognized throughout Europe in terms of the students that come out, having English as a base language where you don't need interpreters, where the culture is very similar, really makes a big difference, and it makes a nice, easy way for people to do that investment. But yeah, it's the lifestyle is amazing. Howard, for time, I know we're running short and we want to get to the Q&As. I'm not going to do my presentation, but what I will do is I'll leave it with Dina and with you guys, and you can perhaps have it as an add-on. We can have some pictures flowing through at the end of it. So I'll leave it for later.
You can actually speak at the same time if you'd like. You're welcome to speak and show your presentation, so we can show the beautiful pics.
Okay, great. I'll get that on now. Yeah.
And it's sold Howard and myself, because I mean those pictures just look magnificent. I mean, we're ready to move to the island life when we're ever ready to fly again. All right, so yeah, let's kick it off. So you're welcome to show your pics, and then also just start off by telling us what are we in for here? What is the cost of a visa for Cyprus? And that it is again.
Okay, so basically. Yeah, so Dina, the big important factor to remember with Cyprus is that they've got two particular residency programs. So one is known as the fast track program, where you have 3 generations who qualify on the same program, which will be mum and dad, the parents, as well as the dependent children up to age 25, which is quite nice because it basically means that those kids can, get involved up and right until that mature age. And they automatically get permanent residency in 2 months. That's a very big difference from that as an opportunity where other people are looking at something a little bit different. We also have something that's known as the slow track program. And I like to emphasize the difference between the two, because the slow track allows non-related individuals to pool their money and invest together. It also then means that they can get residency status individually, using the jointly owned property. And instead of it taking 2 months, it does take 2 years. The only exclusions there are it's not 3 generations, it's only 2 generations. And it does mean that you have the option to be able to rent it out. And that's where Cyprus has a very buoyant market, that it allows you to rent out your property to earn a nice yield for the holiday lets, or you're doing a long-term rental where you get some decent income purely because of all of the infrastructural development that's happening on the island. I mean, Cyprus and Israel are doing some fantastic joint ventures with the natural gas. Lots is happening. They're building massive pipelines between Egypt, where they're going to be the first beneficiaries of the natural gas. A huge big casino resort, the largest in the European Union and in the Med, is going to be in sunny Cyprus. Lots and lots is happening, and they need places to stay. And we're not talking, you know, the kind of guys working on sites. We're talking about engineers, designers, architects, real high level earners and workers who are going to be able to want to rent out those properties. So there's a huge big advantage in terms of that.
Great. And so you talk about the fast track and the slow track. So
yes, correct.
Points for those two programs?
Yes, there are. I'm just trying to see. Let me whip through here. So in essence, the big important factor is to see the strategic location of the island in terms of the rest of the world. It's very easy to get around. You want to go and do business with Putin, you're just over 3 hours into Moscow. You want to nip down across the pond, as I said, to Tel Aviv, you're just over an hour. Ryanair has got 5.
You want to share your screen, by the way?
Is it not sharing? Where am I?
Not at the moment.
Hold a second. Share screen. Are we there? Is it up?
Yes.
Fabulous.
Yeah, okay, now it's
there we
go. Fabulous. So let me just go back up and see where we are. Got you. Fantastic. So the big important factor, as I was mentioning, is the accessibility to the rest of the world. Very easy to get around from Cyprus. Every single airline in the world basically lands there. But more importantly, is for our clients that have got family in Israel, they want to pop across the pond. Ryanair and the other airlines have got 5 flights a day going through between Tel Aviv and Cyprus. That just shows you how much business is being done. The 2 residency programs that I spoke about are the fast track, and then we've got the slow track. So the fast track program basically allows 3 generations in the same family to get residency. So what I am finding is for some of my middle-aged clients, they are actually buying the property in their name. Mum and dad are qualifying as the parents. And then of course, we've got the kids under the age of 25. Here you've got a minimum investment of 300,000 euros. It takes 2 months for the residency to be approved. You need to put 30,000 euros in a fixed deposit account. You can rent the property out. You do not need to live in Cyprus. And the other benefits are that there's no inheritance tax. And down the line, you can actually swap your property out to something if you're buying it purely for the investment initially. Then the slow track program, as I mentioned, this is very unique because it's one of the only programs in Europe that allows non-related individuals to buy a property together. So it can be siblings, it can be you with your partner. There's no minimum investment amount. You buy the jointly owned property and you put your application in. It does take 2 years for the temporary residency to convert to permanent, but it also means that you can rent the property out freely, earn a nice euro-based income, and life kind of continues on that front.
Right.
The second,
sorry, on the second one, is there a limit to how many people can pool their funds together?
Look, the Land Registry Department, Dean, is not happy if it's more than about 6 or 8 is comfortable where they'll be going. More than that, they get a bit antsy because the challenge is that you would need to set up wills. Because there's no inheritance tax in Cyprus, they're very conscious about making sure that everybody is looked after in essence. So if one of the partners passes away, they need to know what to do with that estate, and so that their wills can start ticking over quite quickly. And that's where it's very important that we assist you throughout that entire program to make sure that you are looking after yourself in essence. To nip through the Citizenship Through Investment program, it has been voted as the best one currently in Europe purely because of the speed. It's the only one that takes you, that allows the 3 generations to be able to qualify, and it's approved in 6 months. It is a lot of due diligence. There's Interpol checks that get done. There's a whole lot of tax issues. They need to know where the money comes from. I mean, Rael was mentioning a little earlier, proof of source of funds, is everything coming through? But more importantly, that last point on the slide, it's passed down by descent to future generations. So you won't have a lot of your guests tonight who are saying, oh, I've missed the cutoff, or grandpa died in 1912 and now I'm out of the loop, or I'm in the UK. This goes on in perpetuity. So your great-great-great-grandchild, they haven't even thought about yet, will become regarded as a Cypriot citizen and be entitled to have that very valuable status. So that is why it's been voted as the best, purely because it's Edian, but it's an eye-watering amount. We're looking at 2 million euros as your property investment. Then in addition to that, you've got a 150,000 euros donation to 2 Cypriot government funds. But the difference is that it's very quick, it's a seamless process, it's worked well, and they've enjoyed multiple billions of euros in revenue because of this into the economy. So that makes a lot of sense. Some of the other factors, just in a nutshell, to recap, is the fast track. Remember, 3 generations qualify. It takes 2 months. You get permanent residency immediately. Slow track, there's no minimum investment. Only 2 generations qualify. The minute that a dependent child turns over the age of 18, they pop out of the program. And it does take 2 years for your temporary to convert to permanent. And then we have the second citizenship with those huge numbers that are just quite scary. But in essence, you do have those people that want to buy their family's future immediately to have no concerns at all.
Sorry, Jenny, just before you come on, if you have permanent residence through either the fast or slow track, is there a path to citizenship?
Yes, it is, Howard. So basically, you need to have lived in Cyprus for 5 consecutive years as a tax resident. In other words, you're doing the more than 183 days per annum as a resident in Cyprus. Obviously, the clean records, etc., stand for a reason. In your 6th year, you put your application in, and it takes them a year to 18 months to do the due diligence to grant it. But built into their constitution, Howard, it says if you comply with all of those environments, you are entitled to apply for citizenship. So it's not that we'll think about it. If you're a good girl or a good boy, this is actually built into their constitution. So there is a dedicated legacy plan for you to be able to get it through their naturalization program. I did want to raise some,
Sorry, as well. So if you're the parent and you get that citizenship based off that 5 years, do your kids automatically get that citizenship?
Dina, they do if they're under the age of under the age of 18 or 25 if they're still dependent. We can do a motivation down the line if they're older than that, as long as they're not married. We can put it in with the government. It's a bit of a process. They're kind of saying you should really do the investment, but if you're living there and you can prove there's a direct line, I've had 1 or 2 clients who've managed to push things through. It's not the norm, but it can be done. I did want to, Howard and Dina, just raise a couple of points about Cyprus, which I think maybe a lot of the guys tonight are not aware. It's a very stable economy. They're not linked to the Greek economy at all. They're having a slowdown this year. I mean, Corona's, I think, just blessing the whole world with horrendous numbers. But despite that, they've got some huge infrastructural drives happening. The boys are very happy. Stanley's Moody's, Fitch, and the boys think that they're doing some good solid work there. They're certainly very attractive to investors who are wanting to invest from a business point of view as well as in the real estate. But the big draw card is how this is going to impact the economy with the natural gas finds. Cyprus has got the largest natural gas fields ever found in the Mediterranean to date. By 2022, they're expecting a massive pipeline to be exporting gas into Egypt. And you'll notice at the bottom of this slide, the very first deal that they did was a deal with America and with Israel. So the boys are in bed together, they're doing some exciting things. And this is why the whole of the European Union is happy that Cyprus is part of them, because they are now a supplier of energy. They're less reliant on Russia and around the world. Here's a pipeline. It's an 800 million to 1 trillion euro happening in the country, because Egypt is going to be the first beneficiary of this natural gas exploration. And as I mentioned, there's the biggest casino resort ever built in the European Union to date. It's a Malco group, which are the Hong Kong boys. Huge amounts of money are pouring into the economy, so it's really, really valid. The tax implications are important for South Africans to remember. Most important is the inheritance. No inheritance tax in Cyprus. We protect your assets with a will, and we'll obviously, the minute anybody dies who has a will in Cyprus, the cogs start turning here. They divide the estate as mentioned, and it's up to the guys in South Africa to basically fight for what's happening in terms of on anything that's offshore. I've also brought up the personal tax structure, because in Cyprus, your first 19,500 euros that you're going to earn when you let me rent out your property for you is tax exempt. That's an equivalent of 378,000 Rand. Well, South Africa, that's a very, very different picture. So the nice thing is that we can start sucking money away and building up a nest egg for those future legacies. We're coming to the pictures, guys. This is where Cyprus has really just escalated on different levels. 35-meter visibility in the Mediterranean, 66 blue flag status beaches, the largest per landmass in the world. pristine living. You want to have all those UNESCO sites, go up to the traditional villages. You want to play a little bit of golf. They've got all those outdoor activities. You're in the UNESCO buff and you want to enjoy what happens on the island. All of that is actually available and for you to enjoy as an investor, as a visitor, and as a tourist as well. So in a nutshell, you know, a lot of people are finding Cyprus starts off as a little investment. I want to get my hedge in, secure my plan B, make sure the kids are sorted, make sure mum and dad are sorted. But when you look at the infrastructure, the medical, the education that's available, soon people are getting that container, it's leaving Cape Town, and they're finding this is a place that they actually want to relocate to. I mentioned earlier about the fact that there's no language barrier. That's hugely critical. The holiday rentals are an exceptionally good investment tool. You get really good yields. Despite Corona, we are still getting a lot of tourists coming from Europe. Although tourism is vastly down, I've got my owners who are earning some really good money. Even the long-term leases, my owners are doing really well because of all of that infrastructural development. And then, of course, everything is linked to properties. So we don't necessarily need to go through these slides, but there's everything from apartment living, townhouses, villa estates, etc. Cyprus has it all.
Jenny, may I ask, what does an apartment cost there?
Okay, so basically a one-bedroom apartment with sea views that's around about a 55 to 65 square meter is anything from 100 to 120,000 euros. So you're looking at about 2 to 2.3 million rand. That'll get you very comfortably between a 7 and a 10% rental yield for a short-term holiday let, and that'll get you very comfortably between a 3 and a 5% on a long-term lease.
And are those all managed? So obviously you're talking about
100%. Definitely, 100%. So on the long-term lease, it's the normal due diligence that happens. You know, we screen the tenant, make sure they pay on time. When it comes to the short-term rentals, obviously these are international travelers, so you'll likely have a Booking.com or Airbnb on the background to make sure things happen. They're screened, you got your insurances, but everything is managed from start to finish.
Amazing. And someone just asked, are Northern Cyprus and Southern Cyprus in the EU?
So only the Republic of Cyprus, which is in the south, is full member of the European Union. The north has been occupied by Turkey since 1974. I don't think, to be honest, guys, this is going to be resolved in my lifetime, and it's been going on for 46 years. You just have two different jurisdictions. I say to people, think about Lesotho in South Africa. It's their own little kingdom. So you have the Republic of Cyprus in the south, full member. That's where the economy is going. That's where the money is pouring in. And then you have the north, which just carries on as it is.
Amazing.
Dina, I'm in love, I tell you.
I'm ready to go.
Yeah, pack a bikini, let's go.
If we don't go live there, we're at least going to go to Jenny and rent some property from her.
100%, exactly.
Dina, we have an advert for Jenny and we need to post some of Jenny's details in the chat. So I see some people are already asking for details of her. So Dan, let's show Jenny's advert and then let's post some details into the chat section.
Grab the chance of a lifetime. Invest for your family for generations to come. Cyprus is currently the only English-speaking country in Europe offering permanent residency to South African passport holders through property acquisition. First world medical facilities, Euro-accredited education, safe, easy living. Cypriot Realty is South Africa's leading marketing company promoting property solutions in Cyprus. Call Jenny on 0860 Cyprus. Cypriot Realty, your key to living in beautiful Cyprus.
And of course, people were asking us earlier, everyone's contact details from tonight will in fact be shared on the email that we send out tomorrow to everyone, together with the recording of tonight. Dina, we've run so long over time, we've probably only got about 8 minutes left. Should we try do some questions?
Absolutely. Let's bring all of our panelists back on and sure. Again, there were so many questions and there's been so much interest in this webinar. Hopefully we have answered a lot of the questions, but they are complex. Every single territory, every single country is different. And that's why we have the experts that can be contacted. But listen, we could certainly try. Let's, I think there was a question on Lithuania with regards to the third generation. I don't know if Nida's back.
Nida is back with us. Let's get her unmuted.
Someone just wanted clarification on the 3 generations. So let's maybe start off with that question.
Okay, so let me explain very, very briefly. There is a citizen zero, so-called citizen zero. This is your ancestor who was a citizen of Lithuania from 1918 to 1940. So we start calculating these generations from that citizen zero. Citizen zero does not count. So the first generation is children, the second grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. This is it. This is the three generations which are eligible to reinstate the citizenship. But here is very, very important point. When the citizenship is reinstated and there are future children who will be born after this date of reinstatement, meaning that these children will be born to a parent who is already a citizen of Lithuania, these children will be born as citizens. So the citizenship will carry on to future generations. Reinstatement is happening only to 3 generations. I'm not sure if I made myself clear.
Absolutely. So the reinstatement is available to 3 generations, and then from whoever gets that Lithuanian passport, that carries on in perpetuity.
Yes.
May I ask both Avi and Nita, there have been a lot of questions that if I get my Lithuanian citizenship restored, what happens to my spouse?
Spouses, unfortunately, are not part of this law. Every person has to prove that he personally is a descendant of a person who was a Lithuanian citizen. So if a spouse has own ancestry line from Lithuania, we can take it as a totally separate case. But for sure, spouses cannot apply for passports based on their spouse's ancestry.
Okay, great. And then this is maybe one for Avi, or maybe even for our Goy. It's basically on the Hungarian. Someone said that their mother was Hungarian and she gave all her documentation to her daughter, and they were given Hungarian passports. My husband and I would also like Hungarian passports. How do we go about this?
To be frank, I was supposed to start doing Hungarian and Romanian citizenship, but due to coronavirus, I put off those plans. As I do collaborate with local lawyers, but I never rely only on other companies and other people. I must have my own staff in each country I work in. And due to coronavirus, I just couldn't gather my plans I couldn't fill it.
Okay, cool. Dina, we're going to try get through as many of these as possible because we've promised Dan we'll finish by 10:30. So I'm going to fire away one-word answers are correct. And maybe the next one's for Jenny. Jenny, can you re-explain if 6 families, for example, all put in money to get to buy a house in Cyprus, would all 6 families and their children be eligible for Cypriot passports? But it's not really passports, it's residence, is it not?
It's the residency, correct, Howard. So basically, it's only on the residency program that you can have non-related people jointly buying a property. The minute you're doing the citizenship through investment, it's single families only. But the answer to the question is yes, if you're looking for residency, 6 families can buy. All 6 will get residency in the 2 years that'll take to get processed.
And can I just ask a question for that? What does residency give you?
So residency is your legal right to live in the country without having to go through the onerous immigration processes. So at any stage you want to pack up shop and move in, that's your legal status to be able to do it.
But it doesn't give you your passport to be able to.
You have to live. What it does give you is we applied for long-term Schengen travel visas, Dina, through our embassies in Cyprus. So you'll be able to get a Schengen travel visa stamped into your South African passport, but it doesn't give you any other access automatically.
Sandra, if we can pose a question to you that's come in that says Grenada passports, how long will it take to get a Grenadan passport after an investment is made?
From start, where a family confirms that this is what they want to do, it takes about 6 months. It depends, of course, on how quick the family is to provide us all of the documentation, but on standard, it takes 6 months.
Okay, there are a lot of questions on the retention of South African citizenship that, Rael, if you're still with us, I'd love you to turn on your camera and maybe answer some questions. Retention of South African citizenship. Just tell us what we need to do in order to make sure that if we apply for a second passport that we don't lose our South African citizenship.
Okay, so basically, excuse my scary voice, Howard, that's for you. And it's not Corona, I've been cleared by Daniel Israel today. So anyway, basically, if you're over 18 years old and you voluntarily applied for foreign citizenship, you need to apply for permission. Now, you need to get that permission not before you get the passport. You need to get that permission before you acquire citizenship. So noting that, let's say Lithuania or one of the other countries takes anywhere between, up to 6 months to a year plus, okay, you've got time to do it. Now, in order to apply for retention, they're probably going to kill me. I don't know if it's open, but probably the best place where it's working at the moment is actually Home Affairs in Germiston. It's actually very simple. It's a one-page form that you need to fill in. Okay, sometimes the Home Affairs officials that you deal with try and make it difficult for you. It's a one-page form. That's all it is. And don't allow them to complicate it for you. Don't allow them to make you apply for any other documents. Just fill in that form and submit it. It generally can take 2 weeks or something. You get a letter back to say, Howard is hereby approved to hold Lithuanian citizenship. So it's actually a simple process, and they can't refuse you. They can't refuse permission to you.
Right. And there's been a lot of questions people have asked. They've said if you've already got the second citizenship, you've already got the additional passport, but you haven't applied yet to South African Home Affairs, can you now apply?
That's a difficult one. Look, off the record, you can utilize chaos to your advantage. So basically, they don't know that you've got citizenship already. Basically, as long as you don't tell them. So on the form, just say that, and again, this is off the record in front of a lot of people. I'm happy to share the knowledge. Just tell them that you are intending to apply for Lithuanian citizenship. And then you're sorted. Okay.
Dina, we've had approximately 230 questions asked tonight, and Dan looks like he needs to get to bed. Mm-hmm. So to all of the people who've watched us and have continued to watch us, tomorrow we'll send out a notification of the recording of tonight. We'll also give you the contact details of every single one of the panelists together with the countries that they deal with. Guys, on the panel, we'll submit to you literally the 230 odd questions that people have asked. This seems to be an area of such major interest that maybe in a month or so, we can get back together again and actually address some of these issues. But I would expect that all of you on the panel would get a deluge of requests for information tomorrow. So my apologies in advance to all of you, but there's such interest and I think such demand for the services that you guys are offering that we're so grateful that all of you gave up your evening this evening to be able to assist so many people and advise so many people tonight.
Absolute pleasure, Howard.
Dan, are you going to join Dina and myself going to go live in Cyprus?
Yeah, potentially. Wow, Jenny.
Yeah,
hell of a sales pitch.
Sail. I like it.
Hell of a sales pitch. That looked amazing. Absolutely amazing. I guess we're all willing to go anywhere as soon as the airports open. And
the borders are open and we're able to travel.
We'll
I don't need to go. I don't need an aeroplane. Just let me go to the Kruger Park, please. That's my first port of call.
Guys, Howard, you can always get your 4% Portuguese passport.
I have I'm going to milk my 4% Sephardi background for everything I can. So to all of our panelists tonight, a huge thank you. It's been the most informative and amazing evening, and it's remarkable to see just the huge response of people that we got tonight. Dan, thank you. This wasn't an easy one. We've brought adverts on, in and out. We've been putting things in the chat. People actually don't realize and understand. You should be sweating the way Rail is sweating tonight.
Lucky we got a great voiceover artist for all the adverts, Howie.
People can't understand why the Lithuanians sound like the Grenadians sound like, they just can't understand it. But when I'm big, I want to sound just like Rail.
I'll teach you how. Got a good time.
That deep. Just change the microphone. You're good.
Thanks, guys. We're going to leave the comments open for the next minute. If there are any questions you want to do, please post them into the Q&A section and we'll post them to all of our panelists. If you've enjoyed tonight, please let us know in the chat section as well, so we can pass that on and your information as well onto all of the people who've been on tonight. We thank you so much for joining us, both to the thousands of people who've joined us as well as to this remarkable team of such talented individuals. We'll see you again on the weekend. Give us a day or two to work out exactly what we're going to do on the weekend on our 41st Zoom webinar. And with that, Dan, let's leave this open for another minute or two so people can, in fact, post comments and questions. But with that, thank you to everyone for joining us. Good night, and we'll see you on the weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you very much, all. It was very nice.
Thank you.
Good night, Dan.
Good night, Avi. We'll speak tomorrow about the passports.
Yeah, we'll do. Definitely. Okay, thank you very much. Good night, all.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks so much.